All right, welcome everybody. Hey Nick, what's going on? This is more of a tutorial broadcast, hence why you hear no music or anything. I recently had the pleasure of making a 152 checklist for the JPLogistics 152 mod, which is what we're running tonight right here. So, yeah, again, it's a mod that you can download. It makes the 152 pretty realistic. I mean, the cruising speed's a little fast still. But I'm trying to help them work on it, as I am basically most of my real world flight hours in the 152, seconded by the 172, and then finally I'll be doing the Piper Warrior hopefully soon. I'm looking to get signed off on renting that so I can start flying that as well. But I wanted to do tonight as like a stream, if you will, which I'll also upload to my YouTube Eric Flight channel. But yeah, no check right today, Nick. Yep. Well, I didn't get to go on the Piper Warrior. He wants me to get signed off on that. So, it's just what it is. You just sometimes have to wait. So, regardless, we're going to use this 152 checklist that I made for JPLogistics mod. It'll probably be released in the next 1.0 version. And let me show that to you right now. So this is what it looks like. We'll zoom in and out on the things we need. And all I did was I took my real-world checklist along with the pre-flight checklist, which usually most people don't need in the simulator. But we're going to kind of go through everything tonight. We're going to go in-depth so that way people can get a real idea of how realistic or what is done in the real world on a 152 to make it fly. All right. So on the left here, we're going to start right away. We have the initial check. As you walk to the aircraft, you want to check for the general condition. You're looking just basically at the plane while you're walking towards it and making sure it looks pretty good. The pitot cover would be on the outside, on the right side. This is the P2, which it basically has RAM airspeed go into it and helps you to find out your indicated airspeed on the airspeed indicator. But sometimes they have a cover on this to keep out ice and stuff like that. So you'd want to take that off. Cowl plugs. The cowl is the front of the aircraft here. You might have some pads stuck in here, and those are called cowl plugs. You want to remove those before you start the plane at all. And finally, a rudder lock, which they don't really have in the simulator. But for the flight school, we use PVC pipe with pool noodles, and they tie them together, and they just wrap around the rudder right here. And what they do is they just lock the rudder in place so that if there's any wind or anything, there's one pool noodle there, one pool noodle here, and then you tie it up over here, and it keeps it straight so that the rudder doesn't move left or right like I'm doing right now. And that keeps it kind of locked for wind gust or anything like that when it's parked. Sometimes they sell little discs that can go in here, and you tie them off, but regardless, rudder lock might be on there. So in real life, you'd look for that stuff before you go to the inside of the aircraft. Nick Gresla, again, has joined Twitch broadcast. King Kicker, how you doing? We just started with the initial. We're now moving to the internal, which means I've opened up the door to the plane. I'm looking inside at the panel there, and again, we'll go inside. So, we've hopped in the plane. We're not ready to take off or anything yet. We're still doing what we call the pre-flight here. This is the internal portion of the pre-flight. Some of the stuff you can do on sim, and some of you can't. Most of it you can, honestly. That's why most people skip the pre-flight, but we're going to do it all tonight. So ignition, the key to the airplane, which is just a normal key. Kind of small, but yay big. Okay. You put it on the dash. That way you get in the habit of putting it there, so that way you will not lose that. Tell me why I know that's a good thing. Well, one time the key got lost and I couldn't find it and I was freaking out. But if you always get in the habit of putting on the dash right on top here, you won't have a problem. Carb heat, you want it off. That would be this thing right here. Off means that's pushed all the way in. Notice that I put it on the checklist, pushed in. So that way people who don't have experience will know that when it's all the way in, that means off. King Kicker, that's amazing with your flight yoke. I hope that you enjoy that. It's going to be way better than controller if you ask me. All right, radio and transponder. There's no avionics master switch in this plane, if you know what I mean. So you actually turn these knobs to turn the radios on right here. This is your COM2, your COM 1, and then finally your transponder is part of the avionics as well. But you want to make sure that the radio and transponder are off, which they are right now. That's pointing to off. This is all the way to the left, and that's all the way to the left, so that's off. Battery master on. Okay. Battery master on's right here. You have your alternator master on and your battery. We typically turn both on, so I'm going to do that with my multi-panel, and hopefully it works. It did. And you want to move to this stuff ASAP because now you're on battery power, and if it basically works down to nothing, then you have a problem. Notice that my carb heat went out. That's just a program I'm using that does that sometimes when you first do the master, so I just put it back in. All right, fuel quantity. You'll check the fuel quantity. It's about 50%. Let's fill this puppy, and you'll see the difference now. And you'll see that's 100 now, so that's good. Fuel selector. This might be important. This is how you turn the fuel on for the plane. Typically, when you rent a plane for real, most of the time they just leave this on, which means it's down. That means the fuel's on. If it's up, it's off. So we want it on, we leave it down. That's what the fuel selector is. Flaps. So you're going to put them all the way down. That'd be that switch right here. You're just going to push it all the way down. You're also going to verify that the flaps go down, which are these things back here. Okay. Internal lights, external lights. Basically, all these switches will go on. Your dome light, you'll check it. It'd probably be up here. I know on the mod it's not really working yet, or something's going on, but that would turn on the dome light. Okay, pitot, heat, nav lights, all of them. Just turn them all on. And then when I go outside, and make sure that the external lights are working. On the left wing, we should see this thing flashing. That's your strobe light. Here's your left nav light, which is red. It's on. We're going to check for the beacon, which should be on. Okay, good. This is your landing light right here, so that is working right there. I also got to check on the right side. And again, you have a strobe light here and also your right nav light. And that's typically all the lights you're going to find on the 152. Sometimes they won't have strobes. Both aircraft I fly in real life don't have strobe lights. But if they do, you want to check them. All right? We go back in the plane. We check the external lights. The internal lights would probably be the dome light and also the basically red night light, which would be turned on by this thing. This switch would look differently, by the way. But notice it says panel lighting. So I typically think that means the gauges, because on the mod, oh wait, it does work. This is the dome light though. So in real life, let me just set this straight. This switch would control this, and then this little turning wheel thing here for lights would control this. This would turn red, and this would be your night lighting. So that is not authentic in the sim, but in real life, that's what it would do. All right. After that, we're also going to test the pitot heat on the outside. Again, you put your hand on this thing and just make sure it warms up. That's in case it ices up while you're flying. You have pitot heat, and it will get the ice and snow off, whatever's frozen on there. And we just want to make sure that that's working. Again, one of the 152s I fly in real life does not have pitot heat. What do you do in that case? You pray. No kidding. You would descend down and try to get to warmer weather, and you'd also understand that your airspeed, if it's wonky, that you'd want to descend and see if it can get it unwonky, because that, again, is for the RAM airspeed going in it, and that's what controls your airspeed along with, I believe, the static port. I'm going to be a little about things sometimes, so just go with it. Good. We're going to turn everything off now, so all lights and also the battery. You can turn the battery off first, so we'll turn this off. And then we'll turn all the lights off, just so that we start from there. And that's pretty much how we're doing that so far. Documents. These are important. On this checklist, I broke it down. Basically, somewhere in the plane, typically back here, or on the side here, or underneath here, which it seems like it is over in this. It looks like the little pocket right there. But you're not going to see this in the sim. But in the real life, you'd have an airworthiness certificate. It's like a little paper card like that. You'd have a registration, just like a car, a little card like that. Usually those are together in this little pocket right here. Radio operator certificate, if required. It's only required if you're going outside the United States. I actually have one, which I forgot to bring to show you. But basically, you pay $70 online, and the FCC lets you print out a little card that you can laminate like that and has your name on it and says you're a restricted radio operator. Nothing too flashy. They just want money. But you don't need one if you're just operating the United States. They don't require that. If you're outside the United States, they do. And the operating handbook, which I thought oh, give me a second. Now, this isn't an operating handbook per se, but this kind of is a copy that you can buy. And this one's actually for a 152. It's actually for a 1980 152. I picked this up off somebody on Facebook that was selling all these pilot supplies. So they call it an Airman Information Manual, but the POH would basically be the more official copy of this. And it has all these sections in it on weights, the way the engine works, this and that, limitations of the aircraft, etc., etc. But you need the original copy of this, not this. See, this isn't legal. This is just for me at home. You need the original operator's handbook in the plane in order to operate it. If you don't have one of those, you're not flying. And then finally, you need the weight and balance. The weight and balance is a sheet. Each aircraft is different. It depends on all the electronics you have in it and this and that. And it basically lays out the weight and balance for the whole entire plane specific to that plane that you're in. So you need that. That's usually somewhere in this big little binder together with the POH and this and that, but you need that too. You can't take off without it. Loose gear, you're just going to secure anything that's bags, stuff like that. Again, back here they have a place that you can do a cargo net in real life. Seat belts, just make sure that they're on there and they're pretty good, that everything's like buckled up. Again, the sim, you don't have to worry about that as much, but you want to make sure that you tug them and they're working. Control lock, you will never see this in the sim, but you see this little hole right here? That little hole in real life, you have this little, basically, it's a metal card with like a little L-shaped thing. And you put that in the hole, and it locks the yoke. And it also has a little metal thing over here. It's like a warning over the battery master and basically ignition set. You can't start the plane without taking it off. And again, it locks the aileron so that you cannot turn the yoke. You can't push it back and forth on the elevator. And the simulator, they won't have that except if you buy like a X-Plane, I think the Airfoil Labs 172 has it, but I'm not positive on that. But Microsoft Flight Simulator does not have it. Alright, so you're going to remove that thing, though. I like to put it in the back of the seat here. There's a little pouch behind the seat, and that way you don't lose it. And then you just check the controls. It says flight controls, check. So we do a box. We push the yoke in to the right, all the way back to center, to the left, in, and like that. We call that the box. And what you'd be doing is you just want to make sure it's free and correct on all controls here. You'd be looking at the aileron and the elevator back here. That's what we call that stuff. You just want to make sure that they're free and correct and that they can move and there's nothing blocking them. Alright, this GATS jar and fuel hawk. This is to check the fuel in the plane. The GATS jar, they come in different varieties. Typically the really cheap ones are just a little jar and they have this metal little thin rod in the middle of it. And you're going to check for water in the fuel, eventually, underneath the wing. It'd be over here. This model doesn't have little sump ports, but that's why you need a GATS jar. It basically will take it, you stick the little metal rod in that little hole, and it'll seep out fuel, and you want to fill it up about halfway and look for signs of water or anything else that's in the fuel. Most of the time, there won't be anything. It'll just be blue fuel, blue 100 LL fuel. And then finally, the fuel hawk. The fuel hawk is this stick. It's like a big glass tube, and the hawk part is usually, this is optional, but it's basically a red or something just to stop it from falling into the gas tank. Because if it falls in the gas tank, you got problems. And basically, with that glass tube, it's kind of like a test tube. You're gonna put it down on top of the wing. Let me show you what I mean. So, you see this cap right here? This is where all your fuel is. Okay. You're going to put your left foot here, your right foot here, hop up on the plane, not on the wing, just left foot, right foot. Stick that little tube into this hole once you take the cap off. Cap it off with the top of your finger, bring it out, and it'll show you a visual on how much fuel you have in that wing. The fuel in this should be 13 and 13. 13 gallons, 26. However, only 24.5 gallons are usable. How do I know that? Your POH will have all the answers on that. So, just to let you know, typically you just kind of memorize it after a while. But that is something that you would have to do. Again, I just explained why you have a fuel hook. I haven't explained how we're doing that yet, but I kind of did at the same time. All right, everything on the inside of the 152 is done for pre-flight, so now we go to the outside. And half this stuff you can't do on the sim. I know some 172 models do kind of like let you do this and wiggle stuff, but we're not going to do that tonight. But if you notice, the first thing on the external is the landing gear strut. That'd be this thing right here with this little footstep. What you do is you put your foot on there, push down on it, make sure everything's good, looking around for screws or anything. You don't want anything breaking on that. So you just make sure it takes some force, and that way you're good. All right, brake assembly. Can't really see this too good, but it's right here. You have some rotors just like a car, and you have brake pads just like a car. You want to make sure the brake pads have enough thickness to them and that the rotors look good. The other thing, the big thing, is to look at the brake line. Make sure it's not leaking brake fluid or anything like that. That'd be over here too, right underneath into the caliper here. And then finally, you do a tire and tread pressure check right here. The other thing I want to bring your attention to on this checklist, if I scroll all the way down on the left side, it kind of shows you where we're going on the flow of this thing. So we just stepped out of the plane to the left, and we're going to go all the way around the left to the rear, to the front, and then finally back to the pilot seat. That's generally the path we're going to take around the plane as we do this. So we've did the brake assembly, tire and tread pressure. You would basically put your foot on here, push down, make sure it has some good pressure in there. I mean, you could get a gauge out if you really wanted to, but typically we just kind of push the tires and make sure it looks pretty good, nothing sagging there. And the tread, we want to make sure there's treads on there, nothing worn down too much. Fuel tank drain. This is what I talked about when I said you got to take that little GATS jar. And this leaves you a little port right here. You stick that little metal tube. It's not even a tube, it's like a metal rod. Little small metal rod. Stick that in there, the gas will go into the cup. You fill up halfway. Should be all blue if it's good. If it's water, you will see it just have a clear liquid on one layer, and then the fuel on another layer. And then you know that you have to keep sumping that or draining it until it comes out totally blue. You can get condensation in these tanks if you don't use them after a while. Maybe you had some like water seep in through the seals. And water and fuel going into an engine do not mix. So that's why they say sump. Fuel quantity, again, I kind of went over that kind of already. You'd climb up in here, left foot here, right foot here, standing up on the plane like that. Reach over, take the cap off, take your fuel hawk, which is that glass test tube type thing. It's marked off on where the gallon should be. Stick that tube in there, cap it off, pull it up. You'll see the fuel end where it should be, and it should read 13 gallons if it's full or somewhere around there. You know what I mean? It's not exact science all the time. When they fill it to this little rounded top here underneath the cap. So, all right, fuel cap secure. That's because if this thing comes loose during flight, you're not having a good day. So you make sure that's locked on there. You give it a little push and make sure it's really on there. Static port. Hard to see on this, but we're going to try. See this little circle right here? This is important for instruments. I'm not going to go over what instruments, but you need that because it does like the static air pressure, and it compares to a bunch of things and makes the instruments work. It's a little pinhole, so you have to make sure that's clear of debris, ice, anything like that. Just make sure it's clear. That's all they mean by the static port being clear. Air vents ×2. Do you see this little hole right here and this one here? Those are the two air vents on the left side. You want to make sure those are clear. Nick already answered the question on what static port can actually do. It would be the vertical speed indicator, the airspeed indicator, and the altimeter. So thank you, Nick. So that's why you want to make sure the static port is clean. But again, the two air vents to talk about are here and here. Windshield and windows, just make sure they're clean and clear and that you can actually see out of them. They can get bugs and stuff. Pitot tube, check if it's clear. Again, if it's snowing or just in general, it's just a good habit to always do this. Just make sure that the hole of the pitot tube is clear. There's also a little drainage hole in the back here, which we probably can't see. No, but there's like a little pinhole here that drains out water and moisture. You want to make sure that's not blocked up either. Stall warning horn. That'd be this little slot right there. And basically, if I can get this plane to not have, all right, good. Basically this needs to be free and clear too. as the angle of attack increases, in other words, the wing goes up, if it goes at a certain angle to where you're going to have a stall, the wind goes at a certain thing. It's like a whistle almost, if you will. We hear that annoying sound. Yeah, that's your stall warning horn. This has to be free and clear on that. Sometimes people will actually get up there and suck on the hole. So they'll take like a handkerchief or maybe nothing at all, and then go and breathe in, and you should hear the stall warning horn. I typically just look at it to make sure it's clear. But if you really want to do it proper and make sure that it does sound out when it's supposed to be working, you'd suck on that open hole and it should make the stall warning sound. Fuel overflow drain. Believe it or not in the 152. There should be, but Microsoft messed up. It'd be a little tube right here. It's basically it's so that you have open ports so that the gravity-fed fuel can go down. It's kind of like, oh God, what do you call that? Give me a second. It'll come back to me. Maybe it won't come back to me. But basically, there has to be a way for air to get on the top of the tank to push the fuel down. These caps should also have a little bit of that too. It's like a bypass thing. But it'd be a little tube right here. They left it off the model here, so that's not going to help you. And no, this is not it. This is actually to stop the door when you open it from flying all the way into the wing strut. So that stops the door right there. It's like a door stop. So, all right, after the fuel overflow drain, you just make sure that thing is able to leak out fuel. Sometimes if you park the 152 on angle, it'll start leaking fuel out, or if it's really, really heavy with, full of fuel, it'll leak out a little bit of fuel there. It's the overflow drain on that as well. So it's not just about like the, God, I wish I knew the word I was looking for. It's not just about, the air vent to the gas tank. It also lets overflow of fuel in the thing leak out a little bit so that it doesn't plug up anything, if you will. But I think it's more about venting. All right, the wing strut, check secure. You basically pull on this thing, pull it towards you, pull it behind you, push down on it right where you'd put your foot. Make sure that everything is connected together. If you're wondering what this is, it's a tie down point. That's where you'd put a rope through to tie it to the ground. Some people mount their GoPro cameras to that while flying. That's actually a cool thing too. They make mounts for that. But you just want to make sure that the screws are here. Everything's connected. Nothing's falling apart. The screws up here that you check too as well. All right, leading edge. That's the front of the wing. Right here, you just check for cracks. Anything, big dents, stuff like that, that would disrupt the flow of air over the wing. Make sure there's nothing. You'd also go to the side here. Same thing, looking for dents, cracks, anything that will disrupt the flow of air. Okay. Aileron, free and secure. You'd actually take this part that's going up and down on the left here, and you'd move it up and down. Make sure that the yokes are moving left and right as you move it up and down. I'm using the yoke to do this, but you use your hand. And then finally, you'd keep it up like this, and you look underneath to make sure everything's, there's a connecting rod right here. There's a bunch of screws on 3 points, 1, 2, 3. You want to make sure those are all connected and looking really good so that nothing comes loose during flight. All right. Then the next thing, it says flap secured. This is your flap. You put it down because you're going to grab the edge of that right here with your hand. And you're going to give it a little rocking, make sure it stays still. Then you're going to do like your aileron. You can look underneath, and you got to make sure that these rocking ports, there's a little guide path that the motor will push the flap down with. You got to make sure those are clean and not anything in there that can disrupt the usage of flaps. Also, you know that the motor's working because you extended it down. But right here, sometimes they get worn out over time too, so you'd be looking for wear on them. And that's how you check the flaps. Just make sure, you get a little rock. And then also on the top, there's a screw right here. And you want to make sure that the rods are connected right here too as well. All right, vertical stabilizer. Well, before I do that, I look down the plane. There's usually an antenna right here for the ELT. I'm thinking that this is the ELT. I'm guessing on that one. These are usually your comms, COM 1, COM 2. But the ELT would be an antenna. That's missing here too. That'd be your emergency locator transmitter. So this is where the antenna for the ELT would be. Sorry about that. I had to say goodnight to the 8-year-old. And that would basically be emergency locator transmitter. If you pull, I think, 5 Gs or more, it's going to go off. So there'd be an antenna here. Then you're going to go all the way down the plane here. And this would be the vertical stabilizer right here. It's your elevator. You're going to grab it, not too tight. You're not going to push it too hard. You're going to rock it just a little bit, make sure it's secure to the plane. There are screws right here too that you look at. And then finally you're going to start looking at the horizontal stabilizer, which is this. You're just going to give a little rock to that, make sure it's on the plane. You're not going to grab that thing with brute force like Hulk or anything. Make sure the screws are good. Alright. Finally going to go to the elevator back here. That'd be the part that goes up and down that I'm doing right now. There are little screws in here. Can't really back up as well. There we go. And you gotta make sure that there's little screws are all connected in there and stuff, and that you're gonna rock it up and down with your hand, up and down, and make sure that it goes there. Also, at the same time, you gotta check the rudder. Make sure you're gonna rock it back and forth with your hand just slightly. There's 3 connection points, 1, 2, 3. You gotta make sure the screws are good and everything's good in there and not loose. Okay. Finally, control cables. If you look over here, you can see one. Here's one over here. Here's one on the other side, and that'd be the ones connected to your rudder. That's basically the 2 cables that will control your rudder. And you gotta look and make sure those are connected. And everything looks good. Hey, Roscott, thank you for the raid. 3 viewers. Thank you so much, sir.
Beverage service. Yeah, that's not included on this flight. Do you pay the extra fee?
Not going to be the most exciting stream. We're going over how to fly the 152 realistically, and I'm going through the pre-flight right now, so bear with me. So control cables there. Also, I don't know if you can see this now, but if you do the elevator, there's one here and there's one here, and that's what controls the elevator up and down cables in there. So you want to make sure those are greased. They look pretty good. Nothing's broken. Nothing's stranded, so we're good there. All right. You also want to look at these screws, rivets. Make sure everything's connected. Then you're going to be on the right side here. Again, you got to look at this elevator side. You got to look at the screws and stuff on top. There's usually a little port right here that they don't have in the model. So, oh yeah, cool. Oh, this is the one I basically trained in to do my private. Over here, this is your trim tab. I'm going to use my trim wheel right here and watch what happens. That's the only thing that controls the trim on the 152. Rosecud, thank you for following on Twitch.
Do that kind of flying here. Dangerous and irresponsible.
So you can see that says trim tab next under control cables, and that's what they mean. They want to make sure that you have this little, there's a castle nut with a pin in there. You want to make sure that's tight. You want to make sure that it's secure. You rock around this little tab right here. Make sure that's on there tight and everything's good. Again, I'm also going to check this horizontal, the vertical stabilizer right here. I'm going to give it a little push, make sure it's good and everything's attached. Look at the screws over here and everything. Make sure we're good. Okay, then we're going to work our way down the plane. We're looking over here, looking at antennas and everything, make sure everything's good, no cracks or anything. We go to the flap here, and it's the same exact thing we do on the other side. We're going to look over here for this screw. We're going to look at the tracks right there. We're going to rock it up and down, make sure it's attached really well. There's these little rolling pins again that you got to make sure that there's nothing overused there or anything, and that everything is good there.
I want to do barrel rolls and loop-the-loops. Yeah.
Thank you for following Savoy 30 on Twitch.
Dangerous and irresponsible.
Be lawsuits.
Well, who does?
Finally, we go to the aileron free and secure. Again, you're going to grab this and you're going to rock it up and down with your hand. Typically, you want to look at the yoke and make sure it's doing that. 'Cause if it's not, then if it's not moving, you got something wrong with the pulley in there. Then you got to keep it up like this. Go look for the 3 attachment points with screws. 1, 2, 3, somewhere in there. There's also a rod that pushes this up and down, so you want to make sure that that's connected and secure. Finally, we got leading edge again. We're going to start from the side here. Yeah, man, I would love that. Yeah, I would love that, man. So we're going to do the wing strut. We're going to check for cracks, big gouges, dents, anything that will disrupt the airflow of the wing. And we're also going to do that all the way down the front here. Same thing, cracks. Anything that will disrupt the airflow over the wing. That's what we're looking for on the leading edge check. Then when it comes to the wing strut, and you see why we went around the airplane this way? That way it's systematically done. You just follow around the airplane. The wing strut again is this part right here. You're going to basically push down right here where you would step on it. You're going to look for connections here, screws. You're going to make sure everything's connected. Then everything works.
All that kind of stuff.
Thank you to Rostislav Kudlak for subscribing to me on YouTube, where I will also be posting this video later on, because I think a lot of people wanted to learn how to do this. And we're using the sim because most people learn how to do it in the sim first. So that's what it means by wing strut, check secure. Tire and tread pressure, again, we're on this wheel, this main wheel back here. We had put our foot on top of it, push down, make sure there's some good pressure in there. If you wanted to check with a tire gauge, you could, but typically that's what we do. Just make sure it's not mushy and that there's no visual like, oh my God, the thing's going flat. That did happen, I think once or twice when I flew the plane, and then I just asked maintenance to take care of that. But good fixing. So how's it going? Our next thing after that, tire tread. Well, you also want to check the treads, make sure that there's no flat spots or anything, because that could be bad. It could lead to a blowout. Brake assembly, again, hard to see in the sim, but that would be down here. You also have a brake line that comes down from here. You want to make sure that's not bleeding out brake fluid or anything. Check your rotors, make sure that they're good. Check the brake pads, make sure they're good, and make sure everything's just really looking okay down here. So, doing the walk around, you know it. Landing gear strut. That would be, again, this part right here. We take our foot, push down really hard on this, make sure everything's good, secure, that all the screws are in, and that it can hold some weight, because that's what's going to absorb your landing. So if that can't take your weight, there's no way in heck it's going to be able to be safe while landing. Fuel tank drain sump. Again, you got to take that fuel gas jar. Told you about. There's usually a little port right here. It's not on this model. I think they should put it on there, but attention to detail. Just saying. And again, the cup. It's a plastic cup. Has a little metal rod, like really thin. You stick that up in the port. It makes a cap go up. Fuel starts coming out. You fill it up halfway. You let go, and it's a spring, so it closes the door. Check the fuel halfway up the cup. It should be all blue if it's good. If there's any water, you'll see a clear liquid and the bottom. If you ever take a lesson, they're probably going to show you what that looks like. By the way, they'll fill it up and they'll say, hey, put a little water in this. Hey, that's what it looks like when you have water in there. If you had water in there, you're going to keep sumping it until you don't have water in there. And again, that can happen with condensation in the tanks. Maybe something leaked through the seal here on the fuel cap. So fuel and water, again, don't do well mixed in an engine. So it has caused problems with some pilots in the past who didn't check. Fuel quantity, visual check. Again, we're on this side of the aircraft. We put our right foot up here, left foot up here, and that would let us reach over here, unscrew the cap. You get the fuel hawk, which again is that big glass test tube thing with all the gallons of fuel marked out already. Drop it down, keep it vertical, cap, put your finger on top, pull it out, and it should tell you how much visually is in here. That's actually going to be more accurate than fuel gauges, believe it or not. In real life, we don't really trust the fuel gauges. We just make sure they kind of work. But we really go by the visuals here. Sim Caesar! You picked the most boring stream to come to rating-wise, but thank you, sir. Rating with 67 people. Oh my lord. I hope I don't bore 67 people to death as I go over how to fly the 152 for real. Yep, sorry, I have no clue on what I set that to, but thank you so much to Sim Caesar and the whole gang there. Yeah, I'm sorry. So anyways, we're going through this checklist I made for the JPLogistics 152. It'll be released with the version 1.0 version once it's done. And I'm trying to go over every little thing on what we do in a 152 to make it fly in real life as much as I can with the sim to train people. So, I hope not. But thank you, DigiDriver, for following me on Twitch. And we were at the fuel quantity visual check on this wing. Again, right foot here, left foot here. Take that off. Fuel hawk, that test tube thing I told you with all the marking of gallons on it. Put it down there. Put it on top. Bring it out. Tells you how much gallons you have in this wing. 13's full. Anything less than that is not full. And we're good. All right, fuel cap. Make sure that thing's on there. Turns, you gotta make sure it's really on there. If you did get the plane refueled, by the way, they would fill up both sides. Guess what?
Do barrel rolls and loop the loops.
Aviator 1996, thank you for following me on Twitch.
Here. Dangerous and irresponsible.
Any lawsuits?
Well, who does?
Heck flat.
Again, this will be copied over to my Airflight YouTube channel after for posterity. So make sure that these caps are on there, because that'd be a bad day if you didn't make sure they were on there. If you get refueled, it's your job to go back up there and make sure. Oh, good fixins. Thank you for gifting a sub. That's amazing. And it went to Sim Caesar, who's like the most generous guy on gifting subs.
I want to do barrel
So thank you.
rolls and
Thank you to
loop the loops.
Slow402 for following me on Twitch. Or is that SL0402? Sierra Lima 0402. But thank you for following me on Twitch.
Who does?
Heck flat.
So anyways, you get it refueled, go up on that wing and make sure those caps are on there, because you're the one responsible. Make sure that they're tightened down, and also make sure that they filled it full. I know that most 99.9% of the time they're going to be on there pretty secure and it's going to be full, but you're responsible. So just remember that. All right, air vents. This can't be emulated on here that well too, and I'll show you why, okay? We've got this one here, we got this one there. Then this little door is your third air vent. How do I open that? Well, you'd go back in here and you'd open up the cabin air, the open air entry. And what should happen is this little thing should open right here, this little door. And that should be your third air vent. But that doesn't happen on the Microsoft Flight Simulator model. So this air vent, that air vent, this air vent, you check all three and make sure they're clear and clean of any debris. Okay? Windshield windows, pretty standard here. Just make sure they're clean and clear. Wipe them off if you got too many bugs and you can't see out the window. Oil quantity, not gonna be able to show you this that well either. But you see this little door right here? We would open up that little door, and there's like a little oil twist cap, for lack of a better term. You twist it to the left. If it gets stuck on there, which some people like crank that thing down, they usually have a tool. I know my flight school, they have like a wooden block, big long block thing, and it has the oil cap etched out of it, and you just put it on there and twist really hard and it'll take the cap off. You take out the rod. You don't have to take it out all the way. Just make sure that the line of the oil is at least on 5. 4 is minimal and 6 is max. Notice that I put that on the checklist there for anyone to understand, but you don't have to do that because you can't do it in the sim. Some aircraft, 152, you can. You know, again, I'm not going to go specific models, but let me put it this way. Oh, what's that company there? They'll come back to me. Well, there are certain companies that will make custom aircraft where you can do a pre-flight, so might as well go over it. Fuel strainer, which is in the same place as the oil. You're going to put the oil cap, screw it back on, hopefully not too tight for the next person. And then there's this little white square, which is a fuel strainer drain. You're going to pull it out. Some people say for 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. So, A2A, thank you. Yeah, A2A probably has the whole walk around that you could do on the pre-flight that you could do, but I typically don't do it. I'm just doing it because I want everyone to have the chance to do that. So you can use this checklist, the JPLogistics mod, and do it if you want to train like real life. But anyways, that little square, it says fuel strainer right on it. You pull it, you put it back down, and it's going to look like the aircraft, for lack of a better term, is peeing right here. It's peeing out fuel and other contaminants that might be in the fuel strainer. And that's why you clear that. You're also going to look at that. Just look for any air bubble, stuff like that, water, and make sure no contaminants are in there. That's why you're flushing out the fuel strainer. After that, you put this cap back down, make sure it's locked down. Ask me how I know. I think the flight, I went to Chatham. Yeah, I was not rushing. I was just excited because I was still like a new private pilot. And I forgot to push that all the way down. I'm landing at Chatham. That thing popped right up. It wasn't a huge thing. I could still fly, but you don't want anything popping up on you. You don't know if that is hinged on there really well. That could have been a problem if it went flying off. You know, so just make sure that you push that down. Cowling and cam locks. This is the cowl right here. Buff MTD! Thank you for following me on Twitch. Good fixins, there's your sound.
Yeah, big boy.
Yeah, it wasn't scary. It was just flapping there in the wind. You know, it was flapping there in the wind, and I was like, well, I'm landing, so I'll get it when I get down there. I'm just thankful that nothing ripped off. I mean, I kind of knew it wasn't going to rip off, but you never know. Cowling is this part of the airplane. It's basically the cover that covers over the old engine and parts here. See these little screws right here? These are the screws that you're looking for because they can, you know, get loose. They can get lost during flight. They usually have a spring on them, so if they pop out, they don't fly off. They're just kind of stuck there. You can take a screwdriver and tighten them down. Sometimes they become, whatchamacallit? They'll come back to me. Stripped. The threads will be stripped. So, yeah, exactly. So, you know, better just to check it and make sure it's there. Richard Peak, by the way, thank you. And welcome to the broadcast. Yeah, just Skipper Jeff it is, but it's a fuel strainer. You don't do it for long. I don't even do it for 3 seconds. I just make sure I got a good amount. Call it a day. But the other fuel on the gas jars, by the way, I know at Plymouth there's a Lowe's type bucket, and they put like cat litter on the bottom, and you pour it in there. Typically what I do, and some people think this is a party foul too, but if it looks good and there's no water in it, which 90-something% of the time there's no water in it, I'll actually put the gas back in the tank, because I'm like that. I know that it doesn't mean much, but of all the times I've flown the aircraft, I've put that fuel back in, so. And gas kind of evaporates quickly, but, you know. But that's just me. Fuel's gotta look good, but see, some people aren't gonna agree with me. Right. Yeah. I mean, it's typically not good, but the fuel strainer is the only thing that I do because it's going to come out of there. It shoots out pretty good, too, so you're not going to get it all in a cup unless you got, like, a big bucket. So, just saying. All right, cowling and cam locks. So you're looking at all these screws, making sure everything's tightened, including ones that would be up here, okay? That is the cowling and cam locks down here, okay? Then when it comes to the front of the plane, we'll look at the propeller on the spinner right here. We're going to feel around for any rough edges, cracks. We're going to visually look at the back of it. I'm going to have to go back here. Make sure that there's no stress fracture, stuff like that. You want it to look nice and secure on the plane. Same thing with this blade down here. You're going to feel for cracks, dents, scratches, anything that would make it break with force. You're going to visually inspect the back and the front. Also, you do the front here, obviously. The spinner, you want to make sure there's no dents, cracks, anything like that. Typically, there's mostly not in the planes I fly. I've never found anything wrong. But it can happen, and you are responsible. The alternator belt, you're not going to get a good look at this either, but that'd be on the left side here. Just like a car. I would say good fixins, no. If you got a dent in the prop, that probably means it hit something and you're better off erring on the side of caution. I really just look for like fractures, stress on the prop, and if there's a big dent, I'm probably not taking that aircraft up. I gotta be honest with you. Yeah. Alright, the alternator belt would be here. It's like a car. They have a belt pulley system. You gotta pull on that rubber belt a little bit, make sure it stays on the alternator. That's not dried and cracked or anything like that. So, but yeah, some nicks are fine. Again, it might show a little wear on the edges here from just like hitting bugs, stuff like that. Maybe it kicked up a couple rocks. But if there's a dent, you want to, you know, check with maintenance if you're unsure. You know what I mean? If it's your own plane and you're not sure, get it checked out, you know. So anyways, you pull the alternator belt, make sure it looks good and it's tight and it's on there, it's not loose, we're good. Starter gearing is the gear. It'd be down here. When you go to start the plane, it's the thing that kicks the propeller to start the plane. Again, it's going to turn to the left. Never ever turn the propeller to the left because that could make it start. If you're ever going to turn the prop, you're going to turn to the right slowly and still think it could start so that way you don't get close to it. Alright? You're always cautious and think this is a live thing even if it's not. So, but the starter gearing is the thing that basically hits the gear here and gets her started. So you want to make sure that that has no wearing down on the teeth that hook up to the gear and everything. And that's what you're looking for, starter gear. Air filter, you can't really see that either. That'd be down here. It'd be like a little box, if you will. It's metal. And sometimes it'll have a metal covering on it for winter, which means less air goes into it, because in winter you don't need as much air because it's more dense. But you look for birds' nests and stuff. Birds love to nest in airplanes. I haven't seen one yet, but I've heard of airplanes at the flight school having that. You want to make sure it's clean and clear, nothing in front of it. That air can easily go into the air filter right there. Nose gear and strut, we're down here. First thing I look at is the strut right here. I make sure that there is, I think it's 2 inches at least. So this is good because it can compress over time. That's like, it's hydraulics and stuff. So they have to like, maintain that, if you will. Over here's the shimmy joint. That makes the wheel stay straight and not just go all over the place. That can go on either the 152, 172 a lot. The 172 one time I landed and the shimmy joint was going and I thought I broke the plane. So I landed and literally the front wheel started going like this and I thought I broke the landing gear. I was like, oh crap, and I had a passenger with me too who knew something about flying. So yeah, I stopped the plane and then I tried to taxi off to see if it was fine, and it taxied off fine. It was just the shimmy joint was going right here. So we want to make sure that that shock right here is good. That again, there's enough pressure there, and that everything looks good. You'll look for the screws and everything right here. This absorbs shock as well. That's part of the whole strut right here. There's little gas tubes on this side. And this side, I don't think they have it in here, except maybe this long one is it. I've never seen them this long, but I guess they could be that long. Those are blow-by oil gas ports, I believe. I might be guessing on that one. But you want to make sure those are not blocked during the winter, or else you could have a problem with gases and stuff going back into where they shouldn't be. So make sure those are clear in the winter. Again, your exhaust. It's there. Make sure it's not cracked or anything. That could be a big carbon monoxide in the cabin if there's a crack inside. You look for what you can look for, though. There's usually a carbon monoxide detector in there. And then, just make sure it's in good workable condition. Then finally, tire tread and pressure, just like the other ones. We're going to push in from the front, push down on it, make sure it's good pressure you can get out. Gauge if you want, but typically we just make sure that generally it's full and good. Tread, make sure there's no flat spots or anything like that from landing. Okay, and then finally, the final thing you want to check, Cowling and chem locks on this side. That'd be all these things right here. Make sure that they're in there. Make sure that this is closed too. This is where you jump start the plane. They get a little thing out there if your battery died. I've had that happen once. Oh, thank you, Pilot Bert 11. Thank you. It's actually a virtual green screen, so all this is just a video playing behind me, believe it or not. XSplit VCam if you want to check it out. And it works pretty good with good lighting, so. But you make sure all these screws are in there. You can tighten them down yourself, but if you're unsure of anything, again, check with maintenance. And you are good. There's a couple of screws up here as well. So, yeah, it's pretty good. Took a little while. And after that, guess what? You are done with the whole left column, ladies and gentlemen. Yay! The other stuff goes faster. So that's how you check the 152 pre-flighting. Again, there's a little notice about checking the aircraft for general condition during walk around. Make sure in cold weather, remove even small communications of frost, ice, or snow. Don't have to worry about that in the sim. And control surfaces, make sure the control surfaces contain no internal accumulation of ice or debris. Make sure that there's nothing in there. And if night flight, make sure you have all lights working. That's a big yes, I need that. And also make sure a flashlight's available. Also make sure you have like a red flashlight, because the night lighting isn't always the best in this. I like to use a headlamp. I know it looks dorky, but wherever you look, the red light goes. You know what I'm saying? Alright, so typically, do I need to do that in the sim? The answer is no, which is why in the bottom of the checklist that I made for the JPLogistics 152, I said skip the start if not doing pre-flight sim, but make sure the fuel right here is on. So make sure that little lever is down. It's on right now. That's what it looks like when it's off. Make sure it's on, or else you'll be trying to start the plane and going, why isn't it starting? Which I did all the time when I first got the sim, because I'm so used to flight school where everything's left on. All right, left column. Notice I left it in left column. You don't have to do any of that. Before boarding, preheat cable. Sometimes if it's a cold day, they have a heater for the oil pan and stuff like that. And it's basically just a extension cord cable. It goes and hooks into that little port right over here. So this would be open and there'd be an extension cord going into a electrical connection there. You just pull it off, bring it back, and it's all good. All right, chocks tie downs. How embarrassing is that? Well, you get in the plane, you're like, I'm ready to fly. You look over here after you're about to start the engine, or you did start the engine.
I want to do barrel rolls and
Hey!
loop the loops. Yeah.
Who's that? Pilot Bird 11. Thank you for following me on
Do that
Twitch.
kind of flying here. It's dangerous and irresponsible.
Well, you look over here, the engine's on, and you're like, oh, I'm ready to taxi out. But luckily, you looked over here and you see that maybe there's a rope attached to the ground. That's a tie down. That'd be bad. Don't take off with that, because you're not going much of anywhere. And if you do, you're probably going to snap the rope and maybe even cause damage over here. Who knows? Not a good thing. So there's one there. There's one there. There'd be another rope there. And typically there's one more here on this little hook right there too. That'd be tied to the ground. So make sure those are just untied, ready to go. Or maybe there's a chalk. Chalk. I have to say it right. Chalk. I said chalk. Chalk, which is just basically two wooden or rubber stoppers, if you will, usually tied together. Usually on the front wheel, if there's one. They could be on all three wheels. They could just be on the back two. But you have to get rid of those. Make sure that you can get that thing out of there. Sometimes there's a big combination if people are overly anxious about your plane moving in the wind. They'll tie it down on all three of these and put chocks. Or, could be like me where I showed up in New Bedford and the FBO. Oh, good. Awesome, man. Well, we'll be starting this plane soon after only about probably a half an hour of talking about this. But I wanted to make this video. Actually, an hour of streaming. Holy crap. I'm taking my time, though. I want people to learn this, okay? And if you're going to do even a discovery flight, you can actually show off and say, I know how to pre-flight. And then they can walk around with you as you do the pre-flight, even though there's typically the pilot in command and responsible for it still. All right, so anyways, I was at New Bedford. The FBO was basically closed. They were working on the apron. And the only chalk left there, because I forgot to grab chalks before I took off and landed there, was a big jet chalk, which is a huge thing. And I got this little 152 there. And I'm putting this big jet chalk in the front. I look like a fool, but you need something to hold the plane there while you're going to the restaurant. All right, so that was the before boarding part of the checklist. After boarding, passenger brief. If you got a passenger with you, you need to go over, just like an airline does, how to attach the seat belts, where the sick bags are. Hey, how do I control air? You'd pull this thing out, and they have their own air. Also this, if they want to control that. You'd go over what not to touch. Don't touch that. Don't touch that. Don't touch this. Don't touch that. Don't really touch those. Just these are the things you can touch. That's what I'm talking about. And then you ask if there are any questions. You'd also tell them that, like, if I do this, this is what I do. That means you have to be quiet. I have to talk to you. You might see that in a real-world video on Eric Flight YouTube channel. I took my bandmate of 10 years, and I taught him that. I was like, because I know he likes to talk. I was like, dude, if I do this, no talking. You also have to tell him that there's a sterile cockpit expectation on takeoff, landings, etc., etc. But typically, let me show you what I have. I have that as my passenger safety briefing, and I'll show that to you. So this is what I use. My Eric Flight logo there. I know I look so professional. S stands for seatbelts fastened for taxi, takeoff, and landing. Needs to be. Shoulder harnesses fastened for takeoff and landing. And then I go, but I recommend you wear it at all times because it's a small plane and I don't want you to fall out of the door. So, yeah, no, it's cool, man. Pilot Bert, I'll do as much realism as I can here. Seat position, show them how to move the seat back and forth and make sure that they know that when you pull back on the yoke, that's going to go pretty far because a lot of people won't think it goes back that far. So sometimes the passenger, you just let them sit back a little bit more than you. So unless you're going to let them try the plane, which you're still responsible for. But then they'll be up here. And basically I tell them don't touch the rudders. That's all me if they don't know how to fly a plane. If it's another pilot or something, obviously, there are certain things you can skip or just, make sure that they know if it's different than what they're used to. A is for air vents, location, operation. This, and then mine, okay? That's typically what you have in the 152. The air comes from underneath when you open up this cabin air, which again is that door on the right that open up. All environmental controls, so you tell about heat. You can pull this thing and get some heat. If it's winter and you want heat. This also, see how it only goes all the way out? Typically in real life you could adjust that, but the heat's not too good on most 152, so you just crank that thing out there. And the same thing with the air too, you can adjust that. It doesn't go all the way, it goes all the way out, but you can adjust it by how much you want volume-wise going into the plane. So we'll keep that open for now. All environmental controls action in case of any passenger sick bag location. Usually there'd be a little glove compartment here. They modified this year, or it's right behind the seat in this little pocket that's on the back of the seat. I don't know if we could see that. Let me see if we could. I don't remember if I know how to do that. Ooh, wait a minute. No, it doesn't go back enough. Okay, I tried. Well, anyways, there's a little pocket in the back of the seat, on the back of it. And there's usually sick bags there, or there's a little glove box here, and you pull out a sick bag. You could show them how to use it, like, it's all up to you. Fire extinguisher. We might need these. No, actually, not required to be on board. Notice that there's no fire extinguisher here. On the planes I rent, there's only one, and one of the 172s I rent, so I show them where it is and tell them how to operate it. If there's no fire extinguisher, I just say a little joke and say, don't worry. I was trained during my private pilot check ride on an engine fire, and I know what I'm doing. True story. Location and operation. Exit doors. You got to tell them how to open up this door. Typically in the 152, you just pull this thing back, and it pops right open. Yeah, they even sometimes pop open during flight if you don't really close it that well. So close it, and you just elbow it a couple times. Make sure it's really locked in there. And to open the door, you just pull this latch back, and it opens up the door. Emergency evacuation plan. I basically just tell them, listen for my directions. I might tell you to open up the door. I might tell you to do that. I might tell you to brace. I show them how to brace. Typically, that means putting a coat or some type of cushion, whatever you can find in front of you on the yoke, and making sure that you stay buckled in at all times. Evacuation plan, though, is mostly about keeping the doors open if I tell you to, and then, once we're landed, I will say evacuate, and you get out the door. Typically, in emergency, most people say to have the doors open before you land, so that way they're not stuck on anything. And does that make sense? I think that makes sense. But typically, they say to keep them unlocked and open right before you touch down. The worst that's going to happen, by the way, if a door opens, is the air is going to push it back. So you'll feel a lot of air, and you want to tell your passenger this too. But the door will stay closed, and what you will say is, I will land as soon as possible, and we'll just let you close it. A lot of flight instructors and typically people who are experienced will just basically say, slow down a little bit, and they'll close the door as they can, if that makes sense. Especially if it's on the ground. You just have to make sure that there's no real slipstream coming back here. They'll just say, go down to 1,000, and then they'll close it if it's on the ground. Emergency survival kit. We might need one of these. That's typically back there. It'd be like a little first aid kit. You might have, if you're really rich, a satellite radio phone in there. Typically, with the flight school, it's just a first aid kit with a bunch of supplies, hopefully a tourniquet and stuff like that, in case you crash, can take care of people. And equipment, location, and operation, anything you have. Backup radio. You might go over that if you really wanted to. So. People. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. I had it pop out on me during many lessons. And honestly, you get used to it. There's a lot of air. And I just landed the plane because I was in the pattern. And he closed it when we were down there. And we just took off again. So it's not a big thing. So. All right, but if you have someone that doesn't know anything like that, they're like, the door's open, we're all going to die. You're not going to die. The door usually just, stays against the aircraft with the wind coming at you. Traffic. You tell them they have a job. It's to basically point to any aircraft that they see. So they're an extra pair of eyes for you as you're up there. Scanning, spotting, how to notify me. Again, I just tell them to point, but not like in front of my face. Just like point, say there. Or if they understand clocks, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. 11, 10. Some do, some don't. Talking, sterile cockpit again. You're going to tell them that you don't want them to be talking up a thing when you're trying to listen, especially during taxi, takeoff, and landing. And then finally, the Y is for your questions. So that's it. That's my passenger brief. And I might have stolen that online and just put it on my own thing, but I used up my check ride, and obviously I passed, so it works. All right, back to the checklist here. I'm going to load it up. And again, I made this checklist for the JPLogistics 152. ABC047, thank you for following me on Twitch. And this should be included with version 1.0 when they release it. We are using the mod tonight. Okay, we're still on the after boarding part of the checklist, and this is why most people skip this, but I'm doing the whole thing. Okay, Hobbs tack time. That would be this little thing. That's how they charge you for the plane. Typically,
I want to do barrel rolls and loop-the-loops.
someone else followed.
All that
Who
kind
else
of
followed?
stuff.
Blade Boy
Kind of
22.
flying here.
Thank you for following me on Twitch.
Dangerous and irresponsible.
Yeah, too many lawsuits.
Well, who does?
This tells you the
That's flat.
engine on time. Now, that I'm using this because typically, when you turn the electronics on,
I want to do barrel
that starts moving.
rolls and loop-the-loops.
So.
Yeah. All that
people,
kind of
thank you
stuff.
for following me on
We don't do
Twitch.
that kind of flying here. It's dangerous and irresponsible.
Yeah, too many lawsuits.
Well, who does?
Check flat.
So typically that thing starts moving when you turn the electronics on, and that's how they charge you, and that's also how you calculate flight hours. For example, at my flight school, it costs $100 an hour, and what they mean is by a flight hour. So let's say, a lot of people don't know this too, so let me go over this. Let's say that I rent the plane for a 5-hour window. A lot of people go like, oh man, you have to pay $500 for that? No. No. Now, there are certain rules at certain flight schools about minimums, but at mine, there's really not a minimum unless you rent it overnight. You can see I've already flown this for 11.8 hours, so that would already be in my flight log as, you know, pilot in command if that was just me and I was pilot in command. But typically, what this would mean is, let's say that I flew an hour total today, according to the Hobbs, which is this hour meter here, right? I'm charged $100. That's it. They charge me by the Hobbs time. They don't charge me by the amount of time I rented the plane. So if I make a short hop over to Martha's Vineyard and I have it for a 5-hour window because I want to take my e-bike and bike the island and then fly back, because it's like a 20-minute flight there, 20-minute flight back, and then you have other time too with run-up and taxiing. It's going to cost me about an hour, maybe a little over an hour, and it cost me about 100-something bucks, 120 bucks, 130 bucks to go to Martha's Vineyard for the day, even though I spent 5 hours with the plane, if that makes sense. So I hope that made sense. And I'm sorry that there's no music. I just want to make sure I make the video so everyone can understand it when I post this. All right, circuit breakers. That's these little things right down here. This black one is basically a pull-out fuse. So it basically would, if I hope I'm getting this right. Correct me if I'm not. These white ones are going to pop out if they're bad. So it's just like a circuit breaker box. They're going to break, you pop them back in, and hopefully they stay back in if you have a problem. I've never had a problem with one yet, but you do want to check them and make sure that the white ones are all in and that the black one is kind of, I think it pops out still, just pops out further, and you pop it in if you have a problem. Again, there's emergency procedures I'm not going to go into tonight where you want to check this, but you want to check and make sure all the circuit breakers are in and functional to where they should be. All right. Alternate static. I guess some models of the 152. I don't have that command as a command. You have to look at the Twitch panel below. Sorry. The alternate static. I've never had one on a 152, but you can break one of these to be an alternate static port. It's in the, again, POH, which is just, this is an information manual, so this is non-official POH. This is just for reference for pilots. But you go on the one that's actually in the plane, and it'll tell you which instrument to break on the window, and that could be an alternate static source. If I remember right. I mean, I could read that in here, but I'll be here all day trying to find it, so I'm just going to leave it. Finally, brakes, you just test the pedals, make sure you got some pressure in there. Again, it's hydraulic, so you want to make sure that, like in a car, it doesn't like go all the way down without little resistance there and that they're a little squishy. You know what I'm saying? All right, now, again, just to remind you, if you didn't want to do all that, because you're flying in the sim, you don't have to. I'm just doing what a real-world pilot does, and that goes a lot faster without explaining. So again, on the bottom of the checklist, I wrote this little thing, skip the start if not doing the pre-flight in the sim, but make sure the fuel is on. So make sure this little knob down here is pushed down. That's off, that's on. All right, so let's pretend that we didn't do all the pre-flight. We just want to fly the plane. All right, we'll start the start here. Seat track back lock. That's where you would check the chair and make sure that's locked in there. They have a history of the chair going back while you're flying. If it's not locked in, there's these two rails underneath, and typically there's a little peg that fits in the holes. And you want to make sure that it's adjusted. To do that, you would have a little square type thing. You put your hand underneath the seat, push it up, and just scoot your butt with the seat forward if you want to go forward, or you just release it and put a little pressure on the back there to go back with it. Make sure it's in a good, comfortable place where you can reach the rudder pedals and brakes really well. Avionics are off. Again, there's no avionics master on the 152. Could there be? Maybe, if they did like a mod or something on it. But typically, We're going to turn on the radios by twisting this knob to the right, that knob to the right. This is COM 1, COM 2. And again, your transponder. But we want to make sure everything's off, so that's why it's all the way to the left. So we're good there. Carburetor heat's off, and again, that would be full in. To be off, cold means off. That is on, but you want off. Beacon on. So again, I'm going to touch my multi-panel here, but that would be this switch right here, BCN for beacon. Okay, you're going to turn that on. Nothing will be lit, though, because there's no electricity going on. But they want that on. You're about to turn the engine on. Mixture, full rich. Okay, typically you're going to find the plane like this with the knobs out. I'm, again, using my TPM over here, my SciTech TPM, but watch that little red thing here. Make sure you're going to push that all the way in. Typically, you'd push this in with your finger right there, and then you push it all the way in. All right? Something that people don't know sometimes, because they just don't know. See this little thing right here? This actually rotates left and right. And that's so you can do little fine adjustments to the mixture control, but you can't do that in the sim. It just goes in and out. So go all the way in. That's full rich, which means full mixture of fuel. Throttle, slight. We go about that much in. Okay. Prime. Now, this all depends on a lot of things. One, I'm going to take the parking brake off. We never use the parking brake in real life because the hydraulics, if you have a leak in the hydraulic brakes, you're not going to have any hydraulics for braking. So we typically chalk it or tie it down, but it is here if you need it. To turn the parking brake on, you push the pedals down, pull this out, and then let go, and that typically would park it, but I'm not a big fan of using that, and lots of people aren't, because, again, if you have a break in the a leak in the hydraulics, you're not going to have brakes. It's going to leak out all the fuel. It's like a vacuum type thing. Here's the primer right here, though. This is a carbureted engine. So if you fly the 172 in the simulator, it's typically the glass panel one, or if you have the deluxe version like I do, you can get the steam gauge. That's fuel injected. You wouldn't need a primer because you don't have a carburetor. But all these old planes, we're using World War II technology here. So priming, if it's a warm day, it's summer right now, and the plane hasn't run, or you're the first one to make it run for the day, you probably want to do about 2 shots of prime, okay? 1, 2. And the simulator doesn't matter, honestly, but I'm just telling you what we do in real life. Okay? And then we'd say, we try it out starting. Let's say it's a cold day, all right? It's winter and it's cold. I might prime this 3 or 4 shots, okay? So I just do that, 3 or 4th time or more on top of the 2. But summer, typically it's 2. Cherokee 180, I'm not positive on, honestly, Pilot Bird. I'd have to look at that. Not a big Piper guy, but I am trying to learn how to fly the Piper Warrior in real life. They're trying to sign me off on that. So when I get there, I'll let you know. Again, on the prime menu, I say up to 3 pumps above freezing, 2 to 4 cold weather. Brakes are set. That means you push down the brake pedals.
Do barrel rolls.
Thank you to Ben.
All that kind of stuff.
I want to say Ben
Do that kind of flying
for subscribing to me on YouTube.
Dangerous and irresponsible.
This video will eventually make its way up there.
Well, who does?
Heck flat. So I'm pushing the brakes down. That means by brakes set. We're going to yell clear prop as soon as we start it. I typically don't do it until I'm ready to start, but you can go clear prop. And you also want to look on your left and your right. That's to tell people outside. You'd open up the window, by the way. I don't know if nope, windows can't open on this, but you'd open up the window and say clear prop. Look on left, look on right, make sure everything's clear, no one's back there. Then you're going to turn the master on, flip these up. Okay, get your key, which should be on the dashboard. Quickly, because the gas dissipates in there really fast. Keys in, and what you're going to do is you're going to go clear prop, and you're going to turn it on. You turn it to the right to start, and then when the engine starts, you're going to kick it back to the left once to both. Here we go. Clear prop. And back to both. All right, my engine's going. The first thing I want to do is get to about 1,000 RPMs. Okay, one thing on this JPLogistics mod is sometimes if you go to 1,000 RPMs, this light will flash. It'll say that it's not charging, but it is kind of charging, so that's good. Oh, okay, I got you. Yeah, I did all my training in the 152, then I got signed up on the 172, which is almost the same, just bigger. And now I'm doing the Piper Warrior right now, so they are a little more stable, if you ask me, than the Cessnas. That's just me personally, personal opinion. All right, master on, mags to start. Oil pressure you're going to check after you make sure that's at 1,000. That'd be down here. It's in the green, so we're looking good. Lights as required. Typically, I like to put the landing light on when I do the run up. Taxi lights I don't have on my 152s in real life, so I'm going to basically turn that on now. Okay. I'm also going to leave the strobe off. We do not turn the strobes on because you can blind people on the apron with that. So you wait till you're done with your run-up on that. Nav lights, I turn them on because typically the ADS-B, which is new technology, basically, I think the mod makes it a little bit more realistic. Just me. But since the last update, I got to be honest with you, Microsoft actually worked on it too. So, but I still like the JPLogistics mod. I think it handles more like the real aircraft. So, and I'm trying to help them out on this thing too, obviously, because I made this checklist for them. So you won't get a real-world checklist like this, even though this is not to be used for real-world flight, even though I basically took my real-world flight stuff and put it on there. All right, we are still on the starting checklist. We did the prime, prop clear, oil pressure, lights. We're on lights. Now lights I turn on because the ADS-B out, which is the radio beacon that sends out the information on this plane to other ADS-B receivers. Typically, nice thing to have, required in most places. There's certain airspaces where you don't need it, but we have it because we're right around Class Bravo, Boston airspace. So after the transponder turns on, nav lights are beacon because that's how they retrofit these things. They'll replace the beacon light with a beacon light that also has ADS-B out on it, or the nav lights, which in the 152s I fly, it's the nav light on the left that has it. But that's how they get the ADS-B installed on a lot of these. That's why I said often transponder nav lights are beacon. Transponder, if it's a newer transponder, could have ADS-B out on that. Could also have ADS-B out and in if you have like a 530, 430 GPS system. But typically, these don't come with one. In real life, I have a little receiver that goes to the tablet that you're seeing on screen up there. And that will stream it Bluetooth to my tablet and show me traffic in the area. So, all right, that's ADS-B. ATIS, AWOS. We're going to go to our radios now. But what's the problem? Well, we skipped a step. See, we didn't do the beginning. We did mixture as required, which is right where it should be. We're about 150 MSL. See, so you can't, really easy to skip over things in the checklist. So we did the oil pressure check. We did lights. Mixture as required. We leave that all the way in. We're only 150 MSL. And now we're on the pre-taxi list. So we're going to do this right here still. Seatbelt harnesses, just make sure they're on you and they're good. Flaps up. And we're going to make this knob go up. We just typically grab that and go up. I got a preset button here, though. You're also visually going to check to make sure they go up. I hope this is informational. I know it's long. But I'm going with it. Flaps up, heat vent, defrost as required. Again, I'm going to have some cabin air because it's summer. Okay, I'm on clear weather here. I didn't go nuts here. I didn't put multiplayer on or anything. We still have traffic, though. And this guy's waiting for me. He's been waiting me there for an hour or so. Yeah, you could. You could lean on the ground, but if it's only 150, we don't really bother. But if you're in, like, Colorado, you better be leaning that thing. So, yeah. Does that make sense? Okay. And you would lean for maximum RPMs. So what you might do, I'll show you what you would do. You typically rev this up with the brakes on, by the way, so the brakes are still set. My feet's on the brake. The 1700, and I lean back the mixture just a bit to maximum RPMs. But you see that's not really doing much because I'm only 150 MSL. So again, in real life, it might go up a little bit. Okay, yeah, I know. You're thinking about following plugs, but that's the way I was trained. No big thing. We also make sure that, you know, on the run-up, everything's good, so. But I know what you mean, Richard Peak. And that being your name, rightfully so, sir. Rightfully so. I believe in the operator's handbook, by the way, they tell you at what altitude level MSL you should start making sure that you check the lean. But again, I could be here all day doing that. Here's the pre-flight inspection. And again, this is just a copy of the pilot's operating handbook, but it's never updated, so that's why it's not official. So, leaning. Exhaust gas temperature. We don't have a temperature gauge. Exhaust gas temperature gauge. But, yeah. It's not a bad thing. He's not saying anything wrong. And I'm not saying anything wrong either. But, again, I don't own the plane. So, and that's how I was trained in the flight school. So I just do what they told me to do. All right. Heat vent defrost avionics on and set. Okay, that means we're going to twist these knobs now. We're going to turn the radios on. See, a lot of people think, oh, there's an avionics master switch. Not usually in the 152. And you know, get a volume. You'd probably get some feedback on radios and stuff. Okay, avionics also include the transponder. Set to alt. We're set to 1200 for VFR. We're going to stay there. Okay, and to set my radios, I'm going to use my radio panel here, my SciTech one. Com 1, I'm going to set to Plymouth traffic 122725. Okay, Com 2, I'm going to set it to the weather 135.625. And I'm also going to set the standby at 121.5, which is the guard channel. All right, I have to do this though. I always do this. Enjoy.
You're on guard with
Now, typically you're wondering, what the hell just happened? Well, guard is the emergency broadcast. You want it on standby if possible, because you can quickly switch it to mic 2. This mic panel, mic 1, it means that you're going to communicate in com 1. That means this radios. Com 2 means that your microphone's going to communicate on these. So if you're standing by on this one, and you have an emergency, you just flip 2, poof, you can talk to them automatically. Mayday, 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 got a problem. And it's a lot quicker than trying to dial it in when you're trying to deal with an emergency. But we're going to go back to com 1. If you want to monitor, in other words, you want to communicate on com 1, but you want to hear the frequency on com 2, you're going to hit this both button. And what it's going to do is it's going to let you hear both of these at the same time. So, to make sure, real noob stuff here. See how it says use? This one on the left is the one we're tuned into right now. This is the CTAF, which is the Common Traffic Advisory Frequency. So anyone in Plymouth seeing this is not towered is going to communicate over this if they're using a radio. They're not required to use a radio. And then this is the weather. So that's why I have that used on com 2. But you're not hearing anything because I have to go to com 2. So I push both and watch this. Now I can hear com 2 and com 1.
1500 Zulu. Wind 286 at tree. Visibility niner. Sky condition clear. Temperature 15 C dew point. 1 tree C altimeter 29992.
All right, we're going to set that to 29992. It says 150 MSL, so I know it's good.
1500 Zulu. Wind 286 at tree. Visibility niner. Sky condition.
All right, we're going to go runway 24. That's typically the runway. I'm now going to push this button. This will switch between your standby and the one that you're using. So now I'm monitoring guard. And I'm going to leave it on both, so that way if anyone has an emergency or someone wants to get a hold of me over the emergency channel, that I can hear them. You know what I'm saying? And it's also good. We're not going to fly a VAT sim tonight. Nope. I'm just going to show you typically on the 152 what to do. So, long broadcast, but it's to make sure people can actually have a real world 152 pilot try to explain things to them so that they can do it as real as they want to. So, alright, I'm also tuned into this. You're not hearing anything, but if you use Microsoft's terrible ATC, at least they have it. X-Plane does not unless you have that plug-in, and I never got that to work. You can announce anything you want on 122.725. We're just going to kind of do our thing here. I'm not going to do comms so much tonight. It's more about flying the 152. I might even go through this plane here and pretend it's not there. But anyways, we're still on the checklist here. Seatbelts, harnesses, avionics on and set. Transponder, alt, and squawk. This light would typically blink on the transponder here and there. It depends on what type of transponder, but you'd see it blink if it's working. ATIS beyond, we talked about. ATIS is the weather that we just did. And we make sure we set the pressure according to what it said on the radio, which is 29.92. You could double check. Field aviation elevation's 150-ish, so that looks to be correct. Let's say that you don't have a weather station on the field, like Mansfield, 1 Bravo 9er. Typically, you look at the airport diagram or the chart supplement, and you just set this to field elevation, which I think is 50 feet there. So I do this, and I just kind of be around there until it says 50. But we're at 150, so let me do it for Plymouth now. Right about there, and that's a 299.92, which is what they said on the radio. So that's kind of what you do in case you don't have any weather station there. Altimeter is set. Okay, that's what they mean by that with the pressure. Radio, we would test it. We'd go Plymouth traffic, Cessna Radical Foxtrot, radio check, please. And typically, hopefully, someone comes back to let you know that your radio is working and they can hear you. And they go like 5x5, which means totally clear. or they might see loud and clear. It's basically just get a response to make sure your radio's working. Important, because one time my radio didn't work above 2,000 feet, and I had to squawk 7,600. And then they told me everything checked out fine. And I was like, no, it's not fine. All right, so we test the radio taxi light as required. I'd probably put it on. I like putting on any light I can for visibility. All right, so I put taxi lights on, beacons on. I double check my lights. Strobes off until we're ready to take off. Navs on. Pitot heat, if it's cold or whatever, you can turn it on. I typically keep it off unless I really need it. And the dome light I keep off because, again, that would be this. There's no need for it during the day. All right. And one more time, this rotating switch, which looks a little different in light, looks different in real life. Control your red light right here for night lighting. You want to make sure that's off too. All right. Guess what? We're ready to taxi now. See how it says test the brakes? As you taxi out for 2-4, which is going to be my left. We're going to tap on the brakes and make sure they stop the plane. All right. Attitude indicator, we're going to test that. We're just going to make sure that stays in one place. Okay. We're going to make sure the trunk and the ball moves around. We go left and right, and that, you know, things move. The heading indicator, we're going to make sure the gyro is working and everything like that. We'd also probably want to set that to 1.5, which it is. Okay. And without further ado, we're going to taxi out the 2-4. Again, we're not going to worry about comms tonight. That might be a different video. Here we go. Parking brakes off. A little bit of thrust. Just to get started. Then kick it back a little bit. Test the brakes. Brakes are good. Pretend that plane's not in front of me. And we're going to take a left while looking at the right here. And the left. And we're going to taxi to 2-4. Taxi speed should be like a jog. So typically it's about 1,000, 1,200 RPMs in real life, which, again, the JPLogistics mod is pretty spot on if you ask me on that one. And we have our foot on the rudder pedals and ready to go on the brakes if we need it, but we try not to use the brakes unless really possible. Okay. 2-4 is the runway right over here, so we're going to go all the way down. Going a little fast now, so I'm going to hit the brake just a little bit. This wouldn't be there in real life. I'm going to look left. Make sure we're clear because we're about to cross another runway. Clear. I'd also go this side. It wouldn't take off that fast, so that's not really realistic, but that's okay. That's clear. All right. And before I cross this runway, which is 1533, I only know that because it's Plymouth. I'd go Plymouth traffic, Cessna Foxtrot, crossing runway 1533, and this is Echo in real life. Echo, Plymouth. And then I'm looking left and right still, making sure no one's coming down because you are responsible. And we're going to cross the runway. So far we took care of pre-flight and taxiing so far. And again, you want to kick it up a little bit to get it going, but then you kick it back to like 1,000, 1,200. Slight jog. Try to stay off the brakes if you can, but use brakes when you have to. This is downhill in real life, so sometimes you got to use brakes here. Okay. Now, before we get over here, this little area right here is called the run-up area. That's where we test the engine before we take off. So typically we come down here, and we're going to do a left turn. And we try to do run-ups into the wind. At least that's the way I was trained. So we're going to turn right here. The reason why I'm taking this spot is if the plane's after you and they have to do a run-up, they're going to go over the behind you. Okay, typically in the wind like that. Okay, I want it at 1,000 so I don't fall plugs or anything like that. And we're at the run-up section now. So brakes are set, which means I just push down on the brakes, make sure everything's good. Brakes are on. Fuel, we make sure it's set on, which it should be, or else it's not going to work. Maybe sometimes you hit that with your foot. I don't know. I've never had a problem with it, but we make sure it's all the way down. Trim set for takeoff, that would be right here. I turn this wheel up or down. I have a trim wheel here. So we're at the takeoff indicator right there. Flight controls. We did this before. We're going to do it again. Can make sure they're free and correct so that they move the way they're supposed to. Again, the box. Push in. Go to the right. Pull all the way back. Center to the left. All the way in to the center and then back out neutral. And you'd also check your ailerons, which are these things, and the elevator while you do that. And that way you make sure that the controls are working and everything's good. All right. Instruments. I actually, on this checklist, you know, usually I just say instruments. You know the 6 major instruments you're going to look at are right here. But I broke it down for people because if you don't know what you're looking at, then you kind of need to know what you're looking at. So turn command is this thing right here. Got to make sure the ball's in the middle, unless you're on like a little slant or something. It might be a little off, but typically in the middle. And this little flag here, you have a red flag if it wasn't working. Okay, that has no flag there, so that means that it's getting electricity and it works. Okay, ball in the middle, no flag. Flag means that little red thing that there, that would be that's not working. Heading indicator set. We gotta check the compass, compare it to this. It looks good. Should be about 205, which it is. This moves around in real life more than what the simulator shows, by the way. Again, the X-plane, Airfoil Labs 172. It's a little more realistic with that. And X-plane in general is on that. Vertical speed. You want to make sure that's reading nothing because you're not going up or down. If not, you have a gauge problem. Altimeter, again, you can look for the airfield MSL, which is 150 here in Plymouth, so that looks good. Maybe get another weather check if something's weird, you know. If it's not reading right, might be something wrong with the gauge. Okay, the horizon set, which just means that, see this little switch right here? You could nose up and down it, but you want it to be lined up in the middle on level ground here. So we're looking pretty good there. And airspeed, you want it to basically read all the way down because we're not going there, so it's correct. Okay, mixture best power. Again, we could do that check like, what's his name said? Richard Peak said, if you're in Colorado, you're definitely going to be doing that even before you get out of the apron there. But typically, again, at Plymouth, we kind of just leave it there because it's 150 MSL. But true. You could follow some plugs if you're dumping extra fuel in there. But did you know that the mixture is typically dumping extra fuel in there no matter what? And that's why you lean it out. So all the way it's typically going to dump extra fuel. And that does gum up some things sometimes. Okay, primer in and lock. This thing, you actually twist it and it locks in there. You don't want that to fall out during flight. That would be bad. Very bad. Okay, so we just tug on it, make sure it's locked in there. Then finally, we're going to rev this up to 1700 RPMs. We're going to look over here. Push the throttle in with the brakes on, by the way. So I'm pushing down on the brakes. 1700. And this is one thing the JPLogistics mod has to do better. I'm not sure if Microsoft Flight Simulator does this better. I think it does. But what we're going to do is we're going to turn the magneto. These are like your spark plugs. Magnetos are like spark plugs. Okay. So we're going to turn it 2 times until it lines up with R for right magneto. 1, 2, which it's not doing. So that answers a lot. So let me do it manually here. Give me a second. All right, we're on set. So I'm going to go 1, 2. And that's the mod. See how that kind of went down a little bit? You don't want that to go down more than 125 RPMs. Then I go back to both. Click to the right twice. Goes back to 1700. So again, the mod has to work on this. Then we'll go to the left, which is 1 to the left. That dropped down to 125. And finally, you didn't want to see more than a 50 RPM difference, so we're good. The magnetos are good. Back to both should kick us back to 1700. That's the mags check to make sure that they're working. Carburetor heat, we're going to check that by pulling it on. Pull it on. This should drop down, so that looks pretty good. I like to leave it on, by the way, while I do the rest of it, but you can put it back in. All right, you do have to remember to put it back in once you're done with the check. I like to leave it on. All right, then I'm going to check the vacuum. We need this for instruments. You should be in the green. That's the suction gauge right here. That's looking good. The ammeter is all the way to the right on the 152, and the needle is to the right. That means it's charging the battery, so that's always good to see, because if it's not, you have a problem with your alternator. Oil pressure, check. Good. Oil temp, check. And then we're going to idle. Okay, that means we're going to pull the throttle all the way out, and it should stay on and hover probably somewhere around 600, 700. Not more than 700. So let's see what it does here. I'm talking real life, by the way. Yeah, that's pretty good. That's normal. Then I'm going to turn the carb heat off. This is what I do, at least. I turn it off. That should go up a little bit. There you go. And then I'm going to go back to 1,000. Again, not to follow plugs. All right. So that's it. Throttle friction lock. You can't really do this in the sim, but you see this little wheel here? You could loosen that up in real life, and it makes the throttle go in and out a little quicker and easier. So that's what they mean by adjusting the throttle friction lock. Now we're in the pre-takeoff. This is still in the run-up area, but we're done with the run-up. We've made sure the engine's working and it's fine. Okay. Flaps. Typically in a normal takeoff, we do 0 in the 152. When would you need 10 degrees? Let's do, if you're doing a short field, maybe a soft field, maybe you have an obstacle at the end you have to avoid. This is like a 3,000 foot runway or something like that, so we're fine. We typically take off with 0 flaps. Mixture best power, again, you want maximum RPMs. You might lean it out, especially if you're in Colorado. Carburetor heat off, and that's where you're reminded to turn it off. I'm always used to turning it off at the end of the run-up. You might put it on if it's freezing conditions and you're having a rough engine, but then you might even think about not even doing the flight. Typically, you keep it off. Pitot heat as required. Again, if it's a cold day and there's ice and stuff, you might do that so that way your airspeed indicator still works. Heading indicator set the compass. We already kind of did that, but we'll do a double check on that. We're good. Transponder, make sure it's alt and squawking. Notice that they're redundant, but they want to make sure you have the stuff going. We're squawking 1200. Doors and windows closed. Test it with your elbows. Make sure your door does not open, because these do have a history of opening, no problemo. Make sure your windows are latched down. This latch goes up,
Ladies and gentlemen, my
down.
name is Allison and
Good
I'm your
fixins.
chief flight
Thank you very
attendant.
much. Typically,
On
there's
behalf
no
of the air flight
stewardesses
crew,
on 152s.
welcome aboard. At this time, make sure your seat backs and tray tables are in their full upright position and that your seat
We'll wait
belt
for
is
the
correctly fastened. We will be
Passenger
departing
briefing
shortly.
on the buckle up that you would be doing in real life. All right, we're also going to turn on the landing lights at this time. All right, that's what it says right there. Typically 10,000 feet and below, we put the landing lights on. You just again flip this up. I leave them on all the time. I never fly over 10,000 feet though, but I leave them on all the time because extra visibility. Anything for extra visibility. We're also going to turn the strobes on at this time because now we're away from the apron. We're probably not going to blind anybody. Okay. And the pitot heat, I'm going to leave off because it's summer. It's probably not going to have accumulation of snow or ice in there, but if it did, you just flipped it on during flight and it'll take care of it. And that is emulated in the sim in winter freezing conditions. Strobes are on, which I just did. Time, you would note that, especially if you're in the cross country, because you probably have it all planned out at what time, how many minutes it should take you to get to a checkpoint. We're not worried about that today. Brakes will release, but before we release the brakes, we should really do the abort plan, okay? Typically, that goes like this. We're going to go and have an idea of what we're going to do in case there's a problem before we take off, right? Typically, what I do is I go, if there's a problem, mechanical emergency or otherwise, and we're on the runway, we're taking off, and there's still enough available runway ahead of us, we're going to abort takeoff and land directly ahead on the runway. If we are under, I'm going to add 700 feet to this. So I'm going to say, if we're under 850 feet and there's a problem, mechanical emergency or otherwise, we're going to land directly ahead with no more than 30-degree turns because we don't want any losing a speed there if there's an engine out. And best glide speed in this, again, I put all my V speeds up here, is 60. If you notice, it says VBG, best glide full gross. We're going to pretend it's full gross, 60 knots. If it's around 1470, it's 56. But most of the time, a small 152, you're going to be at full gross, 1,670 pounds, I think it is. The parentheses, by the way, is miles per hour. Sometimes there are gauges in miles per hour. We're in knots. So I'm going to stick with the bold. 60 knots. We need to know that, so that way if there's an engine out, we instantly go for airspeed, 60 knots. Look for a best place to land. If we have time, we'll look at the checklist, which we're not going to go over an emergency checklist tonight. We're going to pretend everything's going to be fine. All right? If we're above 850 feet and there's a problem, mechanical emergency or otherwise, we're actually going to take a turn. And usually you're going to turn into the wind, so that way it pushes the aircraft towards the airfield more. All right? We're going to land downwind, which means going this way in the opposite way. We're going to do a 180. Downwind on the taxiway, the grass, the runway, whatever's available to us. Best glide speed, again, is 60. And again, you want to know that, so that way you instantly set for airspeed, look for a best place to land, and if you have time, checklist, which you're probably not going to have a lot of time for if you're on the takeoff roll. All right, and that's your abort plan. And that way you instantly know what you're going to do in case there's a problem. Pre-takeoff is fine. Takeoff, you might want to go over that before you do it, but, you know, we can go the whole short line, so we'll do that. Again, we look left and right, make sure that no one's there. We're clear. Okay, and we're going to go the whole short line for 2-4. Notice that this takes a long time, but that's because I'm explaining everything to you. Typically, this doesn't take more than, I'd say, about 10 to 15 minutes in real life. All right, here's the whole short line. You do not cross that. If you cross that, you're on the runway. It doesn't matter if you're over here or even if you have a little nose. You're typically on the runway. So we're going to stop here. Again, about 1200. We're going to look on downwind, which is this part of it. I'm going to make sure there's no traffic coming in, listening to the radio at all times. Base, final, and if we could, we'd also look at crosswind, because you never know. People can mistake things and say, oh, it's a right pattern. All the turns here on left at Plymouth. And then just to review takeoff, throttle's going to be full. You have to be at least 2280 RPM. If you're not, you're going to abort takeoff. Oil pressure, you'll check for green on the way down. Just make sure everything's good. Rotating at 50 indicated. So when this gets to 50, that's when you're going to slightly pull back on the yoke. You're going to take off, leave ground effect, okay? And then your best rate of climb, which is typically the speed you want to set for to get up most altitude over time, is 67. So somewhere around here. So I might have to pitch the nose down or up, but I want to get to 67 as soon as possible after I rotate and I'm in the air. So that way I get my best climb rate, if that means anything, okay? And if you did use flaps, then you'll do flaps up once you get that established best rate of climb. But we're not using any flaps. So without further ado, downwind's clear, base is clear, file's clear. Crosswind, we're going to call it clear. We'd probably crane our head around to look, but all right. And then we're going to call on the radio to let them know we're departing 24. So we'd say like this: Plymouth traffic, Cessna November Echo Foxtrot, departing runway 24, left closed traffic, Plymouth. And that means I'm going to stay in the box pattern to land. Left closed traffic. We're still listening on the radio, we're looking for traffic, we're good. Now we can cross because we verified we're good to go. Once you're here, by the way, landing aircraft kind of have to do a go around if they see you and they messed up. So, all right, we're going to go to the middle of the runway here. And again, typically what I do is I say my speeds one more time. I go rotate at 50, climb at 67. Best glide speed is 60. All right, I'm releasing the brakes. I'm going to go full throttle. Keep it in the center with the rudder pedals. You typically have to use some right rudder because the torque of the engine makes it want to go to the left, so you do a little bit of right rudder to keep it in the middle. And we're looking over here for 50 knots, and then we're going to pull back slightly on the yoke gradually and rotate. And then I'm going to drop the nose just a little bit. I'm going to try to get to 67, but I want to make sure that I'm off the ground. And now I'm going to pull back to make sure I stay on 67 with full throttle. And there we go. I'm going to try to keep my heading around 2-4, but I'm also going to look outside the window and visually look to make sure that I'm lined up with the runway. And after a while, you kind of just get that cue. Okay? Now notice I went a little faster, so I'm going to pull back a little bit more. That's all. Try to keep it as much around 67 as I can. Best rate of climb. Okay, again, I'm not going to review the pattern tonight. I'm just going to kind of do it because I want to show you what we do for landing. Okay? But typically at Plymouth, there's a noise abatement here. These people over here, these fine people, they live in like a mobile park. And they don't like us because they think we fly too loud and too fast. But the airport was there first. So there are these power lines out here. We're supposed to fly out to the power lines, and then we could take a left turn to go on to crosswind. The other thing that I didn't go over, because again this would be more pattern work, is we want to be at 1,150 feet in the pattern. That's 1,000 feet above ground level. And that's at any airport. VFR, typically that's what you want for the traffic pattern. So now that I'm at 1,150, I'm going to angle down slightly. I'm going to let it build some speed up here, and then I'm going to kick this back to about 2,300 RPMs. Okay. There we go, about 23. That just slows it down. I might do some trimming, keep it at 1,150. Those are the power lines right there, so I can take my left now. We would look to the left, by the way, and then we take the turn. I kind of already looked, but I wanted to clarify that. And, you know, I'm going to ease up a little bit. I'm going to get down to 1,150. It's not an exact science, but you don't want to go too high. Notice I'm going very fast. That is a problem with the mod. They're working on that now. Typically, it'd probably be about 93-ish in real life, not at 103. Okay, and I'm using my visual, but I'm also using the DG, because runway 6 would be that way. All right, I'm a little far out. Okay, I have to be about here visually for the traffic patterns. I'm going to turn down when I look left. It's clear. Notice that I'm going up, so I'm going to ease up a little bit, let it go down to 1,150. Again, this is way faster than real life because the mod, but they're trying their best. They have gotten better. I can't remember if the Microsoft one's actually on spot on. I don't think it is either. Okay, heading 6. And I'm visually looking. Over here in real life, there's like a little water tower that you look for, but it's right off of 3-3. That's where you want to fly for the downwind from Plymouth. Kilo Papa Yankee Mike, by the way, if you're going to do this yourself. Okay, and you turn on course, and I'm a little high, so I'll trim down. Alright, so we're at 2,300. Now, when we come beam the numbers of the runway we're landing at, or here at Plymouth, I'm just used to doing it when I see 3-3 off my left wing. Alright, that's what I'm going to put carpet on. And that's all this climb, cruise, descent here. I'm going to do this by memory, but it's all on the checklist right here. Okay? So make sure you're enriching in case you leaned it out for cruise. Fuel, you make sure it's on. Carb heat, we're going to turn on. Again, when we get to 3-3. And the traffic pattern, by the way, again, not focusing on traffic pattern type, but you should be about halfway up the wing strut, which I'm almost there. So that's a good distance away from the runway I'm landing. We're landing 2-4 over there. Okay, still a little high. Here's 3-3, which is the parallel runway, if you will. Or perpendicular, excuse me. Runway. When I'm about here, that's when I was trained to put carb heat on, so I pull this back. Okay, we're going to level the plane out, and we're going to kick this back to 1,700 RPMs. Always carb heat first, though, because anything under 2,000, if you don't have carb heat on, you could have some icing if it's a really cold day. When it hits the white arc at 85 knots, 10 degrees of flaps, and then angle down slightly. Should be holding about 80 knots. It's all about speeds here. Okay. Now, I'm used to landing here in real life because this is my visual to turn base on. I want to hold about 80. You'll notice that I'll descending slightly. I'm going to turn base now. Okay. Still only have 10 degrees of flaps. Notice that it kicked back a little bit. So now I'm going to angle down a little bit more for speed. I'm also going to look at my RPMs. It's a little slower, so let's kick that to 17. And I'm going to go right here. That's just, you get used to this when you land at this airport. Notice that's a little slow. So I'll kick it up a little bit more if I have to. I'm more about airspeed. 80, 75 is good. Now I'm on base. I'm going to kick it back to 1,500. And then I'm going to put another 10 degrees of flaps in. That's 20. All right. I should be about 70 knots, so I know I have to angle down. It's down at 15. Right about there. So I should be about 75, 70 knots. I'm going to land at this runway. All right. Only 20 degrees of flaps so far. And we're going to do the most basic landing, okay? So we're going to use full flaps. Okay, I'm going to turn for final now. Again, always looking to the left to make sure it's clear before you do. Okay, a little slow, so I'm going to angle down. There you go. It's not bad. We're a little low. Okay. Right about here, full flaps. That should slow us down to about 65, 60 where we want to be. We're going to use our throttle to help us. Okay, I'll be about 65 at most. I want to touch down at about 60. So that's not terrible. Okay, again, we're going to land at what? 60 knots. All right, and right about here, we'll kick the throttle out. It's not about landing at the numbers. It's about landing on the runway. Remember that. So now I'm a little slow. I'm going to kick a little throttle in, and then out, level out, and then we're going to flare. Pull it back nice and gradually. Let it lose speed. That's about 9 feet off the runway when you do that, and nice and easy. On the runway. And we're going to roll, keeping the yoke back. That would do aerodynamic braking. Okay, we don't typically use brakes unless we really have to, remember. We'll tap the brakes. We're going to turn off the right here on the runway. All right. We're not touching anything until we get off the runway. And we're going to follow this yellow line off the runway. Okay. The yoke would definitely slow you down more than that, but they do emulate it better in this mod. And let's go to the right because we're going to go for another one. Okay. So I cross the hold short lines. I stop here. The aircraft has to be fully across the hold short lines. And then I'm going to call out on the radio that I am clear of the runway. So this is how we do that. Plymouth traffic, Cessna 9er Echo Foxtrot, clear of runway 24, Plymouth. Good. Then I'm going to use my checklist. We did all this stuff. I just did it from memory. After landing, flaps up. So that'd be this switch all the way up. Also make sure that they go up. You're looking over here too, because that's motor. If the motor goes, it's not going up. Carb heat off. Not good to leave the carb heat on, by the way, when taxiing down, because you could suck up gravel and dirt into your engine. That'd be bad. Strobes off. We're going to leave them on because we're going to go for another takeoff. Lights as required. Again, if you're parking this thing, turn the strobes off. I typically leave everything else on because I like visibility, but people can turn off the landing lights, you know, stuff like that. It's all preference there. Mixture as required. Again, I'll leave mine all the way in because we're 150 MSL. I do want to be about 1,000 RPMs when I'm idling. Again, so you don't follow the plugs. Trim set for takeoff. That'd be the trim wheel. So make sure it's in the middle. Notice it didn't do much. The 152 is pretty easy to fly. Transponder, make sure you're alt and squawking still. Okay, securings if you're parking. So we're going to do one more takeoff, and then we're going to... No, you know what? Yeah, we're going to do one more takeoff, and then I'll show you how to secure the plane. All right, but you have to do the after landing checklist, and we're going to taxi back to 24 and do one more traffic pattern. Let me know in the chat if this is useful to you. It's long, but yeah, I'm a teacher in real life, and I'm not a CFI. I'm just a private pilot, but I do teach for a living. So it also helps me pay for the flights because I actually have a DIY YouTube channel, and that's what pays for my real flying. That's the only way I can afford being a pilot. So, well, sometimes CFIs have to break it down to a certain lesson. You know, I mean, I'm kind of encompassing everything in one little thing here. So, all right. So again, slight jog. That's your taxi speed. This wouldn't be here in real life. Before we cross this runway, what do we want to do? We want to look left. Make sure it's clear. Okay, and then we want to look to the right. Make sure that's clear. We use not as much brakes as I just did there. It's just really sensitive in the sim. Okay, I'm still holding short of the runway. I'm going to stop here. Again, whenever you idle, 1,000 RPMs. Plymouth traffic says Echo Foxtrot, crossing runway 1533 at, this would be Echo, Plymouth. And then we're still looking, but we're crossing. Because we didn't hear anyone call back on the radio. And this is non-towered. Someday, again, I'll do tutorials with like Class D. Class Charlie, Class Bravo, I've never really landed at in real life, but we could do a tutorial on that. There's just a couple differences for VFR flying. And in real life, this is kind of downhill, so we would use slight taps of the brakes. But again, slight jog, that's all you want. You don't want to go too fast. I could just hear my instructor right now going, you're going a little fast, go a little fast. Slight jog. All right, now, we already landed. We already ran up the plane and everything from before. We did not turn the engine off. So typically, I'm pretty safe on just taking off without a run-up, but you always want to run up the first time after you start up the plane. Even if you like land somewhere for lunch, and then you get back in the plane, you do a run-up again. You know, some people don't, which I think is dumb, because let's say that something happened between the time you ate lunch and the time you got back in it. You don't know. So be safe, do a run-up. Okay, get to the whole short line. Again, we're going to look downwind. Base, final, crosswind. If it's clear and you're not hearing anything on the radio like we're not, we're going to call it. Plymouth traffic, Cessna Echo Foxtrot, parting runway 24, left close traffic, Plymouth. And that again means I'm going to stay in the traffic pattern, which is the box around the field. And we're going to end the stream pretty soon after this. So Again, I'll just show you how to secure the 152 and how we turn it off and everything. But let's go fly the pattern one more time. Again, V speeds, very important. So you have to know what the best rate of climb is, what's the rotate speed, and you can find that on the checklist up here. We're going to rotate at 50. We're going to climb, set pitch for 67 knots for best rate of climb. And we're also going to remember that best glide speed 60 in case there's an emergency. That's what we set for. We pitch for 60 knots. Okay, with that, we're going to put our feet, balls of our heels on the floor. The balls of our feet should be on the bottom of the rudder pedals, not the brakes. You don't want to brake at all. Okay, full throttle, a little bit of right rudder as you're heading down because it wants to go to the left. Keep it in the middle, and we're going to rotate. Excuse me. When this hits 50. Having your hand on the throttle at all times. Don't do what I was doing. Rotate. And nose down just a little bit, slightly. 67 knots. Now we pitch back to keep it at 67. And again, pattern altitude is 1,150, 1,000 feet above ground level. So let's say you had an airfield at 1,000 MSL on the ground. You'd go to 2,000 feet, etc., etc. And again, we have a noise ordinance here. Noise abatement, excuse me, not ordinance. Noise abatement, the mobile park people don't like us, so we have to go to the power lines. And then we can turn left. If we're not at 1,150 feet, you can still turn that left. You don't want to be too far away from the runway. Just keep from the airport runway, you know. So then you just keep climbing while you do the turn. So keeping at 67, keeping my heading about 2.4. I always look for the cranberry bogs here. Those buildings, I don't know if they're that big in real life. I don't remember them being that big, but these are all cranberry bogs because we're in ocean spray cranberry sauce land here in Plymouth, Massachusetts. And I'm looking to the left and right for traffic at the same time. And everything's going well. It becomes a feeling after a while for the 67, but then you glance at this every now and then. You go, oh, yep. Pull it back a little bit more. Power lines are right here. So I can take my left now. I'm going to look at the left, rock the wing up a little bit. I'm clear. Taking a left. I'm already at 1,200, so I'll let the nose drop just a little bit. Keep the power, keep the airspeed coming along. And I typically look at this first, and I know that 6 is going to be off my left, so my left wing should be pointing to about 60 degrees. Oop, way too high, so I'm going to drop that down. I'm even going to kick back on the speed, about 2,300 RPMs, maybe even 22. All right, looking pretty good. Now visually, I know just from landing here in Plymouth so many times that I'm going to go over here. Yeah, it happens. You get a feel for it, like I said. See, like, yeah, I'm not even perfect right now. All right, ready to turn down, downwind, because I don't want to go that way. So, clear. I already looked at my left to make sure it was clear. You might want to rock the wing up. And I might trim it down if I have to, you know? All right, now I should line up with about 6, because 2.4 should be going that way. But we can also visually look, which is what we really want to do. Still high, so let's aim it down a little bit. Notice it's going in the yellow. That's the mod. They have to learn how to make this more realistic on the cruise speed. Okay, we should be about 93 right now, not 100 and going to the yellow, but disregard that for now. They're working on that for version 1.0. Okay, and I'm going to go off right runway 33. When I get there, I'm going to put the carb heat on. Okay, there's usually a water tower you can line up with in real life. There we go. I'm good now, so I can pitch up, maybe trim up just slightly, keep it at 1,150. Okay. Notice I'm about halfway up the wing strut where I should be. That's a good distance from the runway I'm going to land at. All right, and I'm going to beam either the numbers or 3.3. 3.3 because I'm used to it at Plymouth. 3.3, carb heat on. I'm going to pull this out. Okay, I'm going to kick back the RPMs to 1,700. Look on the right here. And I'm going to keep it level until we get to 85 knots, then 10 degrees of flaps, and angle down. Then I'm going to pick a visual point on which to turn my base. For Plymouth, seeing that I've done this so many times, it's this little way right here in between the two ponds. Notice I'm losing some speed. Should be about 80 knots. It's more about airspeed than anything right now. Okay. And I'm looking, but I'm also looking at my instruments here and there. Looking for traffic at the same time. Gets really busy. Okay, I'm going to turn down base. So clear. Going to turn it. Try to keep it at 80. So I might have to angle the nose down to do that. I haven't touched the throttle at all, if you notice. But if I had to, could I? Sure. Could do that. Whatever it takes to keep that airspeed around 80, 75. We're good. All right. We're about base right now, so I kick it back to 1500. Add another 10 degrees of flaps. We should be about 75, 70 knots. Still at 800 feet. MSL, which means I have about 650 feet between me and the ground. Going a little slow, so I'm going to kick up the throttle a little bit. They're working on this as well. They have pretty good on the downwind speed, but those are the flight dynamics we're talking about, you know, because this is clear weather with nothing in it. Okay, looking to the left. They're looking pretty good. I'm going to turn final. Going a little slow, so I'll kick a little throttle in. That's all. Because I'm already losing altitude. Okay. Turning final. Okay, right about, yep, still a little slow though. Should be about 70 knots. Good. Okay, right about here, full flaps. And we're all riding the throttle. We want to be about 65, but we want to land at 60. So we'll do that while we still aim at the middle of the runway. It's a lot of practice and feel on this, by the way. Okay, see how it wants to build speed because I'm descending, so I'm going to pull my throttle out. I might even pull it all the way out. It doesn't matter. I just need to keep it around 65 and land at around 60. If you're too high, you're going to have that throttle out. Let's put it that way. Okay, good. No throttle. About 9 feet off the ground, you start flaring. This is floating a little bit. Just pull it back, pull it back, pull it back. Let it ride. And there you go. It's not about landing on the numbers. It's about making a nice controlled descent landing. Again, yoke all the way back for aerodynamic braking. You can see that slowing down. Okay, and the yellow lines are what get you off onto a taxiway. So that's what you look for. So I might do a couple taps of the brakes here. Real life, the aerodynamic braking would probably be enough. Okay, and now I'm going to turn off the runway. This time I'm going to park it though. So again, a lot of that was from memory, pre-landing, all that stuff. All right. I turn off right here. I make sure the whole aircraft is past the whole short line. If even a part of it is sticking past the whole short line, you're still on the runway. So don't call clear. And now I'm going to call clear. Plymouth traffic, Cessna Echo Foxtrot, clear of runway 24, Plymouth. Now we'll go into our checklist after landing, flaps up. Carb heat off, that means you push this in. Strobes off, I don't even think I put them on. Actually, I did put them on, so we're going to turn them off. Okay. Lights as required, taxi, nav. Turn the well, I leave everything on until I park. That's just me, maximum visibility again. Make sure it's required, we're good, we left it in. Pitot heat off. Again, if you had it on, we kept it off the whole time because it's not freezing outside. Trim set for takeoff. Okay, and now transponder, alt squawk. You always leave the transponder on until you get to the final parking space. See this building right here? This would be my flight school in real life. Airplanes do not park this way at Plymouth. They park the other way, perpendicular to that. But we're going to pull in here, and then I'm going to show you how to shut off the airplane. Okay? So here we go. Always looking left and right. Make sure we're clear before we start moving. And I'll also tell you about parking, because not everyone understands that either. Either did I for years as a simulator pilot until I took lessons. So typically, let's say we're parking this way. You line up with the yellow T behind you. Okay? The T would be like this, right? It'd look like that. So you'd have the horizontal portion lining up with the wings, and the vertical line would be where you're going to do the wings. But what would happen would be, if there was a T, parking T here, it'd be behind me. you'd have it over here like this. Okay, pretend that plane's not there. And that's how you would line up the plane. You'd line up the best you could with the T behind you. Alright? Then we're going to do the securing checklist. So ELT verify silent. Well, guess what? They just want to make sure your ELT, the emergency locating transmitter, is not functioning. So if you hit really hard on the ground, anything 5G or above, I believe it is, you'll hear a boom, 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 boom. And that means that you set it off by accident. We've been monitoring that the whole time, though, because we've been monitoring that 121.5, the emergency channel, on COM 2 the whole time. So we know it's verified silent. Avionics off. Again, we're going to turn off everything electronic. So transponder, radios. Again, there's no avionics master switch in the 152 typically. So we just turn it all the way to the left until they turn off. Faster in life, obviously. Okay, radios are off. We're also going to turn off any lights other than the beacon. You always have to leave the beacon on if the engine is running. So we turn off the taxi. And the landing. And nav. But we're going to leave the beacon on because you need to let people know that the engine's still on. You don't turn the beacon off until the engine's off. Okay? So, avionics are off. Turn off all lights except beacon. Notice they put that in the checklist because not everyone does that. Mixture, full lean. That means we're going to take this red knob and we're going to pull it all the way back. I'm going to do that on my TPM. That's going to turn the engine off. Okay, you wait for the prop to stop. You're going to turn the master off. Just push them down. And then finally, you're going to turn... Well, you got to see the stupid Microsoft Flight Simulator parking screen. You're going to turn the mags off, all the way off. Okay, pull the key out, put it on the dashboard. And then you turn the beacon off. And that's it. Now, you're probably wondering, well, what the hell do we do now? Well, now, you typically have something called a tow bar. Let's see if I can get a picture of a tow bar for you. Give me a second here. And this would not be in the sim, but yeah. Actually, this is a better picture of one. Give me a second. All right, let's go to my vertical briefing screen. This is a Cessna tow bar. And basically, it hooks up to the front wheel. There's these two bolts on the wheel, left and right. You clamp it on there. It's a spring-loaded thing. And you're basically going to push the aircraft. That's right. With your hands. You're going to push it back to line up with the T. And there should be some tie-down spots or something, but you either chalk it or tie it down there. Okay? So what I do in the sim is I set up through the menu how to do slew. So I push Y. You'd have to set this up. Alright, and then I use my yoke and I could basically push it back and forth, and that didn't really do it yet. Why? Because I didn't push on the sim. Alright, so I'm on slew mode. I could go back if I pull back on the yoke, left and right, and I would line it up with the T. And then once I'm done and it's lined up, I push W again. And that's it. I'd consider that parked, alright? If we look at the checklist, we're not done yet, though. Master's off, lights off, Hobbs tack time noted, so that way you know how many flight hours you did. I think we did 11.1 when we started or something like that, right? So I flew for 1.1 hours times $100 an hour. That flight would have cost me $110 at my flight school. Control lock, again, would be that little metal bar that you put in the back pocket, hopefully, so you always find it. You'd put it through this hole here, and it would have a little flag, and you couldn't move the yoke after that. It locks the ailerons and the elevator. Okay, chocks. Well, usually if we're going to be here for a while, it's going to be parked. We put tie downs if we could. If you're transient, in other words, you're just going through for like a lunch or something, you're going to go later, you get chocks, big wooden blocks again. And I might just take one and chalk the front tire. So I put one in front, one in back, and that's it. Or if I really want to make it secure, I might grab all the 3 sets of chocks, put them on all 3. Or I might grab 2 and just do the back 2. You know, I mean, that's all personal preference. Okay, tie downs, you can use those instead of chocks. They might have ropes at the airport you land at, and you just tie them to these things right here. There's a loop right there. There's a loop right here. And there's a loop right back here. And there'd be like a rope that's tied to the ground somehow. and that would tie it down to the ground. So if there's a heavy wind, it's not going anywhere. Those are typically more secure than chocks, by the way. I carry a set in my bag. It's just so I can have them in case I forget to grab chocks, or if there's a tie down and I feel like doing that more. Pitot cover. Again, you're all set. You're done with the aircraft. You're outside. You'd probably put that little boot on there. Again, that would look. Let me see if we can get a picture of one of those. They're not very stylish, but yeah, let me show you what it looks like. So right there, looks like that. It just keeps out debris and ice and snow and stuff like that. And usually has a flag, so that way you remember to take it off. If you don't see it, you'll see it there. So that's why you see those keychains that say remove before flight. Or an Eric flight keychain that says remove before flight. Because I emulate a Pitot cover flag or any other thing. Cowl plugs will have them on there too. And then finally, just make sure the cabin doors are closed. You basically just are on the outside of the aircraft, and you push them down with enough force to make them just close in there. All the planes I rent, typically the door locks don't work. You know, that's just the way it is. But that's it. That'd be what you do, and then you're done with the 152, except for paying for it. So you go back in the flight school with your nice little book that you write down the hobs on. You'd also probably write down the tack time, which is right here. Typically, these are going to be different, so this isn't really realistic because this one is more relating to propellers turns and how I honestly don't remember, but it's a different thing. Whereas the hobs usually turns on with the electricity. As soon as you turn on the electricity, you're getting charged for the plane, if that makes sense. And yeah, that's typically I think I hit most of everything on the 152 from what I remember. And I still fly 152s to this day. I mix it up between that and the 172. So I might do a video on the 172 next on this. And when I do the Piper Warrior and I get signed off on that and I fly it a little bit more, might do one on that when Just Flight releases their thing there. But let's get some music here on the end here. Yeah. There we go. All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone. I'm surprised as many of you stuck around as you did. It shows that I have 26 people still watching. So, thank you so much. And last thing is, are there any questions that I might be able to answer because I'm not a CFI? Okay, this is strictly for sim purposes only. In no way do I want to portray myself as a CFI. I'm just a teacher in real life who teaches music, and I have an idea of how to systematically break down things, I guess. But, yeah, Vulture 7. Hi, how's it going? Any questions you have, put them in chat. We'll just keep it open for a little bit. And yes, this does have a VOR distance tracking thing right here. Basically, you'd have the nav 1 over here. And you dial that in, set it to nav 1, ID it by pulling this out. And you hear the Morse code. And then basically have a to or from indicator, and you would have like a path to follow to get there. So it doesn't have distance measuring equipment that'd be on the ADF, and pretty much that is going the way of the dinosaurs now. We don't use NDBs as much, which are non-directional beacons. We use VORs, and even those, they're going to start closing a lot more of those. They're not going to get rid of them entirely, but they're going to close on the ones they don't need to save on cost, seeing that most people fly with a GPS nowadays. I hope that answered your question. So if you have any other questions, I'll stay on here for about good, 5 minutes, unless there's a lot of questions, and I'll see how many I can answer. By the way, I just want to thank several people for following me tonight while I wait for people to get me questions if they have any. I'd like to thank, let me just make sure I can get this the right way instead of zooming in and out. People, Blade Boy 22, ABC 047, Pilot Bert 11, Puff MTD 123, Sierra Lima 0402, that's how I'm going to say it, for following the channel tonight. Also, Aviator 1996, DigiDriver. I'm noticing all these names for the Sim Caesar channel. Sim Caesar, thank you so much for hosting my channel with 82 viewers. Again, didn't think it was going to be the most famous stream, but I wanted to do one where I could upload this and give everyone a chance to fly the 152 with the real world pilot. And I also got to go over the checklist that I made for the JPLogistics Cessna 152 mod. Savoy 30, thank you for following. Russ Cud, thank you for following. Thank you for rating my channel with 3 viewers. Thank you to my good friend and moderator, Good Fixins, for gifting a sub to Sim Caesar. I'm going to answer that question in a second, by the way. That's on the chat right now. I just want to let you know that any bits, subs, income I make from the Twitch for the months of May and on is going to go towards the Great Cycle Challenge, which you probably see right here on the screen. That is a biking challenge I'm doing in September. So anything you gift, donate to the stream, that's where it's going. So, all right. So, back to the questions here. There is typically no autopilot in the 152. I personally have not seen one with an autopilot, so that is correct. Changing fuel, they're gravity fed. So see how it turns it off automatically too. Did you notice that? Typically we just leave it on in real life, but you can leave it off and that way it won't cross feed. Each wing is gravity fed, so basically they come down both sides at the same time. So there's no left and right switch on the 152. It's just a master on for both tanks or a master off on the fuel. On the 172, they have both a left and a right, but typically we use it on both. And the only time you'd switch to left or right is if it really was cross-fed and one wing has a lot more than the other to even it out. Does that make sense? Yeah. So, any other questions about the 152?
I want to do barrel rolls.
Oh,
and
thank you for
loop-the-loop,
following me,
yeah,
Vulture
all that
7.
kind of stuff. We don't do that kind of
But
flying
we're
here.
here
It's
to
dangerous
just
and irresponsible.
inform people as much about the 152 as I can with my knowledge. Doing most of my training in the 152 as a private pilot. And again, I do fly it from time to time here and there, mixing it up with the 172. So I will give another minute or two for questions. And if not, we're going to close out the stream. We will be rating somebody. So stay tuned for rating. Heading bug. No heading bug. No, because there's typically no autopilot. If anything, it would be a mark. You see that little red thing? That typically isn't there in real life, but I believe that's also a flag to say that nothing's on, it's not working. And here's that flag again on the turn coordinator to show you that it needs electricity to work and that there's no electricity going to it, so it's off, so that wouldn't be working. So if you see that flag, that means it's not working. Same thing here. We typically don't see these in real life, but they do exist. If that means anything. So no heading bug, because there's no autopilot. Not really needed. Yeah, I mean, you could turn this OBS if you want some type of thing. It's a JPLogistics mod. Let me get a link here. But I offered to do the checklist, and I gave them a lot of feedback on the dynamics and stuff. They're still working on it to refine it for version 1.0, but it has done a very nice job. It acts a lot like the real 152. I'd say the biggest things are the cruise is a little too fast compared to real life. So like you saw, I was getting to the yellow line. Typically, it doesn't do that at 2,300 RPMs. You know what I mean? But it's a JPLogistics 152 mod. And eventually, you will see this checklist, which I made for them. I kind of made it retro 80s, too. I hope it looks kind of cool. So, get on the right of the checklist here. It just has reminders for, like, rotation at departure. It's 50. Best angle of climb is to get over, like, obstacles and stuff, 50-foot obstacles in the shortest amount of time. So if you're taking off from a short airfield or a soft airfield, you might want to get up in the air and there might be trees and stuff. So you want to climb at 55 rather than 67. And you also have 10 degrees of flaps typically for a short field. Notice that says short field obstacle 10 degrees of flaps. Climb 54, 55. Okay, shorter soft field without obstacle 10 degrees of flaps still. Best rate of climb 67. I showed that tonight. Cruise. Basically, you go by how fast versus how much fuel you want to use, and this is a little cheat chart right here. Economy, which means saving as most fuel, 4.7 gallons per hour at 55%. You set to 2,150 RPMs when you're cruising. Normal is about 23. I stick with 23 to 2,400 RPM in real life, and maximum is 2,450, and that burns 6.2 gallons per hour. But for flight planning purposes, we usually say the 152 burns about 6 gallons per hour. And then arrival approach at 70. I do 70, 65. And then final, I want to touch down about 65. If it's short final, you want to get down to 55 when you touch down, so that way you don't roll as much. And also you don't float as much as well. So, but I'm not doing short field or soft field tonight. I'm just doing a general overview on how to typically fly the 152. You're watching the RPMs here. It's all up to you. I know what you're talking about. So I'm looking at RPMs. I typically in real world say 2300, 2400. Depends on how fast I want to go. So it's all about RPMs, and again, there's charts in the POH that tell you what setting at what level and what the fuel burn is. But average 6 gallons per an hour. That's what I would say in the 152 for a fuel burn. So at normal cruise. The other question was, both radios do ILS. This doesn't do ILS. This, I mean, it'd have to be instrument rated, which 152s can be instrument rated. This one, I believe, is not instrument rated, so it does more VORs than anything. Could you lock into an ILS? You probably could. Yeah, but they're supposed to check certain things to make it instrument rated. Both radios should be able to select the nav that you want to do. Nav 1, which is the top, or Nav 2, which is this one right here. Okay. The DME and stuff should be, I believe, the ADF over here. I never touched this. NDBs are not even on the private pilot test anymore because they closed down a lot. There used to be one in Taunton. I'm talking about airports in the area right now around Plymouth where we are in the sim. I think there's one. I'm not sure if they closed or not. At Marshfield, which is on the coast of Massachusetts. But a lot of them are closing because everyone's using GPS. And like I said, they're also closing down some VORs because they want less of those, less maintenance and costs. And again, people use GPS a lot more now, if that makes sense. So, but you do have to know about VORs and stuff as a private pilot. Like, that's how you find your way if you get lost. And you need to know how to intercept one to and from it at radio. So, it's also how you find out where you are. If you're totally lost, you intercept 2 VOR radios and you kind of graph them on the sectional and it tells you where you are. Yep. Any other questions about the 152? And I want to try to keep it relevant to the 152. Again, if this is really interesting, not that I'm a CFI, again, I'm just a private pilot, but we might do an informational night here and there. If you join my Discord, which again is right over there, you can give me suggestions and I can see what I can do. But again, I am not a CFI. I am a real world teacher that can break stuff down and lesson plans and stuff, but I am not a CFI at all. I'm just someone who really is passionate about aviation. So, but again, another 1 minute to 2 minutes, and if not, we will close the stream and we will raid someone. And I will thank you for all being here. Thank you to everyone that's followed the channel tonight. Thank you again to Sim Caesar. You're amazing. Thank you to Good Fixins. You're always amazing. And just want to say thanks to everybody. I mean, honestly, you've been great. I didn't think as many people were going to watch this. I thought for sure that it's going to be more of a, I fly this and then I post it up there. Yeah, Vulture 7, that's what I'm here to do. Because I'm doing what I wish someone did for me back in the day when I was just a flight sim pilot only and didn't understand anything about carb heat or anything, you know? So that's why I'm doing this. All right, seeing no more questions then, I think we're going to close down the stream for tonight. So without further ado, stick around because we're going to rate somebody. But thank you so much for coming out tonight. Thank you to everyone who stuck around for the broadcast. Again, not the most exciting because I'm explaining everything, but hopefully for posterity, we'll be posting this to the Eric Flight YouTube channel. If you haven't checked that out, check that out as well. YouTube.com/Eric Flight. I have some real world flight videos up there. And I'll be posting some more of these informational things as I do them. I'll post this after the 24 hours because Twitch needs it for the first 24 hours. Then I'm legally allowed to post it there. So, again, we'll close the stream out. You'll see the end stream thing on there with some credits rolling. But I will be deciding on who to raid. And we will raid someone. Thank you so much. Have a great night. Eric Flight out. We'll see you. Remember to subscribe. Tip your bartenders and waitress staff. And I'll see you next time.